Yes, thank you. Stackhouse?
Here.
Everett?
Here.
Larson?
Here.
Moshway?
Here.
Mattingly?
Here.
Rollinger?
Present.
Schrader?
Here.
And Watson?
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum this evening.
Okay. If everybody could please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we are here, let's see, we have approval of the meeting minutes from the previous meeting, March 22nd. Does anybody have any changes or comments regarding the last meeting minutes? No? Okay, I guess we're good.
Thank you.
That was easy. And now we have a request for a public hearing this evening. It's ZON 11001, Andrew Womack Ministries Incorporated, Planned Unit Development, Planned Business Development, PDD, Zone District, Final Plan, and Preliminary Plat. Request to consider approval of a PDD, Zone District, Final Plan, and Preliminary Plat for 147-acre tract of land located at 5849 Trout Creek Road, County Road 25, Woodland Park, Colorado, for the purpose of developing the sanctuary for the Charis Bible College to be relocated to the site as requested by the applicant, Andrew Womack Ministries, Incorporated. We previously tabled this case on November 10th of 2011, December 8th, 2011, January 12th of 2012, and March 8th, 2012, and we're ready to go forward today. So,
Thank you. I'll do a brief introduction
yes, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Before we start, I've got to make a short disclaimer or disclosure. I have worked with several of the consultants working on this particular project. Particularly, I've worked with the consultant who prepared the final development plan, and as of Monday, he will be my new interim boss where I work.
Okay.
I just want to disclose that, but I believe that regardless, I'll be able to make a fair and impartial decision and be fair.
Okay.
Mr. Stackhouse?
Yes.
And just maybe to clarify for the record, Commissioner Larson, the work that you did with the consultant was not and did not involve this matter, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
I would like to just begin by reviewing what to expect in tonight's hearing. The applicant will begin with a presentation, and when they're done, if commissioners have any questions or clarifications specifically about their presentation, then that's the time to ask questions. Then I will come back to the podium and review the staff report, which is basically the compliance with the code for the PUD-PBD request. You will also have an opportunity to ask staff questions at that time. After that, then there will be a public comment period open for anyone who would like to approach the podium. We are trying to limit comments to 5 minutes, but keep your comments succinct, and we certainly want to hear your input. Then the applicant will have an opportunity to rebut the public comment and answer questions that may arise during that period. Then the chairman will close the public comment portion of the hearing, and at that point the commissioners can continue to ask questions, but you will move into your deliberation portion as you formulate your opinion on the case and potentially make a motion, and then discussion on that motion with a roll call vote. I do want to let you know that we don't want to hurry this case. You need to take your time If we need to go forward with another meeting, we can continue the hearing to the April 26th meeting. So with that, then just a little bit about the process of how we got here. The applicant had submitted an annexation request for about a 35-acre tract that was not in the city. That annexation was approved by City Council on September 1st. Now we're in a zoning portion of the property, the total 147-acre site, and on September 22nd, and then continued to October 13th, you'll recall, except for Jeff and Diane, there was a preliminary plan for the PUD, PBD that you all reviewed and accepted that plan, which then gave the applicant the opportunity to move forward with the preparation and submittal of the final plan for the PUD, PBD, and the preliminary plat. So that is what brings us here this evening at this time. So we are now at the second step in the process, and the applicant has prepared their detailed PUD, PBD final plan and preliminary plat for your review. Your recommendation will move forward to the City Council, where the City Council has the authority to approve the zoning ordinance and the plan and the plat. The staff's preparation this evening will be to review the compliance with the code. I'll be reviewing 3 sections. First, the PUD standards, then the conditional use and special use permit standards, and lastly, the preliminary plat standards. So with that, I will introduce to you Larry Bozeman, and Larry is the applicant's representative, and he will introduce his team. And I'll just switch PowerPoints here for his team to get started.
Thank you, Sally. And city staff, we appreciate the opportunity to be here and present to you, the commissioners. Thank you for hearing our plan, or looking at our plan. We would like to introduce my team members, and these are the people that have the knowledge and expertise and information. I'm just a representative of this group, and I'll start here on this road. This is Bill Tibbett. He's the owner's representative. He is recently joined our team. He's going to be helping me to work through the process, and he's like that, serving as the owner's representative. This is Chris McGranahan. He's with LSC. They've done our traffic study, and he's with LSC Engineering. This is Brett Prather. He's with Architectural Innovations. He's one of the principals in that company, and they've been responsible for preparing the plans. And this is Kyle Campbell. He's a civil engineer with Classic Engineering, and he's been doing our civil engineering work. And then this is Mike Anderson, and Mike did the economic impact analysis for us, and can address the results of that study that he did. And then this is Gary Erickson here. Gary's our contractor and builder, and the last member of the team that I wanted to introduce. So with that, I'll turn this over to Kyle and let Kyle begin with the presentation. No, I guess this Brett is going to be up next, and then Kyle. Thank you very much.
This is Brett Prather with Architectural Innovations, located 1271 Kelly Johnson Boulevard in Colorado Springs. And I thank you for letting us be here and present tonight. As Larry said, I worked on the plan, so I will go through a brief overview of the plan itself for you, and then turn the slide over to Kyle and let him carry the brunt, the bulk of the presentation tonight. The first thing we did as we were visiting with Andrew, our first task is he wanted the building that would be environmentally sensitive to the site. And by environmentally sensitive, he meant by material use, location of the site, lighting and such. He was very keen and sensitive as to how this would work within this community. And I show you a perspective here that shows the entire build-out of the facility. And what we see on this right here is the facility itself is sort of in two parts. It is connected, but this is a banquet hall facility with a classroom located on the left. On the right is the auditorium, the call center, the main concourse area, and a lot of administrative offices located in that section. Or on the lower perspective here, once again, this is the banquet hall area located on the right. This is a view from the west, and this is an area of the call center and an auditorium from the west. And one reason it looks a little low profile here is we have built up the land and the soil in an effort to kind of conceal the building and make it lay within the lay of land, the topography of the land. The material we use in with Andrew, we wanted to pick materials such as it has a lot of timber, a lot of stucco, it matches up with some of the existing facilities, the lodge on the site itself, and various elements of the wood and various stone. We're using real moss rock stone, so it is a very compatible material within the space. The location on the site had a minimal impact as far as within the environment, dealing with watershed and with the timber, so we felt like it was a very good location and the least disruptive and very compatible with, once again, the topography. As we designed the building, it actually is 2 stories at all locations. It has shifted, and some areas look a little higher than others, but it's with the layer of the topography where it is still consistently a 2-story building as opposed to a 3-story building, keeping the profile low. The location as where it is, dealing with the parking around the facility too. We have surrounded the facility, of course, with a fire loop with parking off of this fire loop, and we've tried to locate the parking to the east, primarily, and to the north, and it's away from any of the surrounding neighborhood areas. So within the lighting, we have dark sky ordinances in place for all the parking, and we also have berms and landscape areas that at night times that would shield the headlights from projecting out beyond the areas too, parking and the drive and the fire loop. So we've been very cognizant of keeping our photometrics to what the minimum is for code. And also we have photo cell and time clocks dealing with the parking issues too, so that we have minimal lights as they are necessary. And the typical average time we thought would be around 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, depending on what functions are, but it's designed so that they can time it, and 15 or 20 minutes after function's over, then the parking lights will be out, with the exception on the no parking, which is isolated within the building. That's where the call center runs 24/7, and there will be some parking lot lights in that location, but that is once again very concealed. We've talked about phasing. I'm going to say it's quasi-phased. If you look at the perspective again, the banquet hall section right here is what we call phase 1. The auditorium section is phase 2. We have designed this so the banquet hall can go ahead and start construction while we're finishing up with the drawings on phase 2. So the plan is for phase 2 to start before phase 1 is done. So it's somewhat, not quite concurrently, but it will run as a continuous project. So it will be somewhat, as I say, quasi-phased. I will skip to the slide here, just to give you a sense of the inside. This is the auditorium, to give you a little bit of the character of the space. This is the 2,500-seat auditorium, and as a classroom, serves classroom function and multi-purpose room. And this is the lower-level concourse and the upper-level concourse, which views out to the south and has a view of Pikes Peak and the surrounding area. This said, I will go ahead and turn it over to Kyle, and he can visit with you about the site.
Good evening, Kyle Campbell with Classic Consulting Engineers and Surveyors. I'm here to walk you through some of the site elements and some of the design elements that took place in order to get this final development plan in front of the Planning Commission this evening. When we were first approached about this project, we were brought in early January. We were very excited about this project as far as the opportunity to join this particular team and work on this particular project in Woodland Park. And so we very quickly got up to speed with the site and with a lot of the prior comments from city staff on how to move forward with trying to get this project completed. And so what I'm going to do, if I can, okay, how do I get to the next slide?
It's not responding to it. Right there.
Cool. Thanks. The first slide is just an aerial photograph of the overall property showing the relationship. I think everyone's well aware of it. So it's in relationship to Highway 24 and Trout Creek Road, and then the subdivision on the south side. What's also notated on here is the existing barn structure that's located and is obviously visible by Highway 24, and then the existing pavilion structure that's located next to what we refer to as the middle pond on the property, and then what's been shaded is the overall property boundary, the acreage that was previously described. What I'm going to do, I've got slides in here of the final development plan. I'm not going to walk through every single aspect of the final development plan, but I'm going to hit upon some of the key elements that as we move forward with this design package, some of the challenges and some of the outcomes of the technical aspects of the project. And so as we move forward, and these are the same documents that are inside your packets, inside your reports. And so we get to the initial page of the development plan. When we were brought onto the project, there had been an awful lot of time and effort and energy related to the actual positioning of the Bible College building itself, based upon views, topography, orientation. And so as we were brought onto the team, that was one area that we were able to look at from the utility and drainage standpoint, but that has remained relatively unchanged from the initial concepts as the project has moved forward. What we were able to initially provide some input on and some direction on was main access road, the private drive aisle that comes off of Trout Creek Road. There were a number of different concepts for how do you get from the access point on the Trout Creek Road, back to the main campus area while serving future housing areas, the admin area. And so we went through about 6 or 7 different iterations, trying to find the best location for the roadway that graded out the best, that minimized the impacts from a grading standpoint, that was also conducive to our utility service needs, and also our overall drainage patterns for the site, which was a key element that we'll talk about here in a few minutes. The orientation of the roadway as it enters off of Trout Creek Road, that access point has remained relatively unchanged from some of the initial concepts, and so we've held that concept as it crosses the creek, and then the roadway right now crosses right through where the barn is sitting at right now. And so to give you an orientation, if you know where the barn is located at, that is right where the center line of the road is proposed to go through that particular structure. The existing barn is proposed to be located and converted into a maintenance building on the backside here of the Bible College facility itself. So the roadway continues through the site, essentially running along this ridge, along through here, allowing for the admin building location here, housing in this location here, and then providing an alternative crossing to this tributary area along through here to get back to service the main campus. And as we get into some of the grading exhibits and things like that, it'll become evident why we chose this. Initially, there was a concept of crossing this existing jurisdictional pond facility here, but because of the state's classification and complications associated with that, a much better choice, a much more conducive choice from a grading standpoint was to relocate the roadway up along through here, honoring all the previously established setbacks along the southerly subdivision. The existing pavilion located here in relationship to the Bible College facility here, with additional future housing directly to the north of that. We get into some of the detail sheets. The only thing I want to point out on this particular sheet is there was also a great amount of time and effort spent working with the fire department in order to get an understanding of their needs for access to the site. And so on this particular sheet, you'll see a variety of proposed private street sections, everything from the main entrance road to the guardhouse, all the way up to the actual college building itself. And so we were able to work with the chief and with Vern Chaplin on getting an understanding and also getting an acceptance of our proposed street sections, trying to balance the needs of meeting the city's criteria while also meeting the fire department's criteria for access and for width. More erosion control details, I won't spend any time on that. Then as we get into sort of the main overall plan, get into more of the details as far as the parking configuration around the Bible College itself. As Brett had explained, there's a Phase 1 portion located at this corner right here, and then there's the Phase 2 located up in this area here, and that's been notated on our plans as far as the Phase 1 to the Phase 2. The roadway alignment, once again, crossing this tributary drainage corridor right here. One of the things that I wanted to point out was some of the traffic circulation related to the site, as far as bringing traffic in, how it works in relationship to the drop-off area and then exiting traffic. And so this is a two-lane paved roadway coming into the site with a 12-foot wide gravel shoulder. 12-foot wide gravel shoulder is primarily and predominantly going to be used as a pedestrian corridor to allow hiking and pedestrian activity up along through the various ultimate uses. But during larger events, it will act as an overflow lane, and that was something that once again we worked with the fire department on getting their understanding of what ingress and egress would look like during normal events, during larger events, and how we could always maintain circulation in and out of the property. As we approach the college itself, the road starts to split, and while this is still a two-lane roadway, an access road splits off to provide access to the residential area to the north, and then access for handicap parking for the pavilion and amphitheater in this area. And then we split off into the parking and then to the drop-off area for the main portion of the building here. And then we have a one-way exit lane exiting the property in this location right here. That's not only to assist with larger events, but even during normal events, as far as separating the traffic, allowing a free flow of traffic both in and out of the project to allow a very nice circulation pattern going through the site. As we get into this more easterly portion of the property, along through here, we've got the gatehouse. What I wanted to point out on this particular exhibit, and what's also reflected on the preliminary plat, is the current property runs down portions of it through the center of Trout Creek Road, and portions of it, all of Trout Creek Road is inside the property. And so this plan and the preliminary plat reflect the right-of-way dedication that will be taking place with the final plat to basically get all of that outside of the property and get that right-of-way dedication taken care of. So the roadway is completely taken care of. We're also showing the 8-foot wide public trail also being contained inside that right-of-way dedication along our property. That was one of the requests of Woodland Park, and we were able to accommodate that with our last round of revisions. This is the overall grading plan. One of our goals and one of my company's, a lot of our experience is in hillside projects is looking at roadway profiles and geometry in order to try to minimize the slopes and the impacts of roadways on the grading. And so one of our challenges initially was to try to maintain 2 to 4% slope grades, primarily through the entrance and the guardhouse. And then as we got into key intersections, trying to make sure that we were meeting city criteria as it related to public street standards. Even though these are private streets, we thought it was very important to approach it in that respect. And then also try to keep our street grades within a maximum of about 6 to 8%. We were able to do that. We only have one small stretch on the north where we had to introduce a 10% stretch of roadway. And so we felt very fortunate we were able to come up with a plan that we could maintain a very safe and compliant street grades while adhering to intersection grade criteria throughout site. I will just point out on this particular plan that this is the location that we're showing our detention facility, and I'll talk about that in a few more minutes as we get into the drainage maps. And then this is the embankment crossing along and through here, where we're crossing the tributary drainage corridor down into the middle pond in that location there. Erosion control plan, I won't go into a lot of details on that, or any details on that. We then start to get into the utility plans. There's obviously a lot of information contained on these plans. I'm going to defer the conversation about the overall water system to a later slide that we've got in this presentation that will point out the benefits and what we've been able to do from a water system standpoint. I will point out on this second utility plan that we do have the main entrance and the guardhouse facility here. We were able to go back through and modify that entrance, once again working with the fire chief and with Vern, in order to get the widths and the dimensions, the turnaround radiuses, the slopes, and everything through this main entrance corridor to make it an easier and safer travel path through here. Just a real brief explanation as far as the security measures during normal operations. If you are a visitor or if you're supposed to be on the campus, you enter the site right here, you stop at the guardhouse, and the actual gate is located further back, right where I'm showing the mouse. And so, say you turn in here and you think you're going someplace else or you're not sure where you're at, you have access to this turnaround in order to turn around and then exit the site before you enter beyond the gated area itself. We were able to take a look at this, design this not only for fire trucks but also for semis, for deliveries and things like that. Once again, a lot of people wind up in places they're not supposed to be at, and so we've been able to provide appropriate turning movements in order to make sure that's not a problem with visitors to the project. Drainage maps. This is our existing conditions drainage map. There had already been a very extensive amount of image work done previously as it pertains to both Trout Creek and then this tributary. So there was an analysis that was done for this off-site area here by Kiowa, and then there was another analysis done here by Wilson and Company. Their analysis was primarily related to the floodplain analysis for the proposed crossing. And so, I'm going to flip to the next slide. Working very closely with them, they were able to modify their floodplain analysis for the entrance in order to accommodate the modifications that we made in the entrance. And what you see in your packet inside their report, there is a FEMA-designated floodplain through here. It is a Zone A, which means it's an unstudied floodplain. So as a part of their analysis, they went through and reanalyzed the hydraulic and hydrologic components of Trout Creek in order to study what is the floodplain actually doing through this corridor, and with our entrance, can we ensure the fact that we're not making the floodplain any worse than what it is already out there. And so through their analysis, they were able to confirm that with the drainage structures, the 4 pipes that are proposed for this crossing, we are well within the confines of the FEMA established floodplains, both horizontally and vertically. And so that's in their application package, and all of their calculations are included in the report that you have in front of you right now. The rest of the drainage, obviously dealing with an environment like this up here, you want to try to minimize your release points, especially into very natural and very well-established drainage corridors, especially this tributary along through here downstream of this middle pond. And so instead of proposing 2, 3, 4 different detention ponds, which would then result in 2, 3, 4 different release points and concentrated flows, with the grading and with the roadway grades and the drainage system, we're able to take the Bible College here, this future residential here, the admin building, and the majority of the roadway network, and actually get it all released into one detention and stormwater quality facility. And so that proved to be very beneficial with us being able to then release in one location down into this corridor along and through here instead of the multiple locations. It also allows for one central location from a maintenance standpoint for the ministry to be able to have one location that they need to focus on as far as getting access to and providing ongoing maintenance for that particular facility. We did use Denver urban drainage criteria, full spectrum detention, and stormwater quality volume measurements, and so we felt it was prudent on this particular site to be even more conservative and provide an additional level of security for the facility, not only for storage but also for release, to make sure that as we looked at key points along the site, we were able to say unequivocally that we were matching historic release rates and therefore not impacting anything downstream. So The drainage was also a very big focus of ours as we got into the site. The water system was a very challenging endeavor for us, I'll be perfectly honest. As far as getting into the overall modeling and the overall system, there were a number of constraints, including having to recognize and honor the hospital located to the south of us, as far as our efforts of going through and modeling the site, making sure that their pressures and flows were not being reduced to a point where it would cause any issues with the servicing of the hospital. So working very closely with Jim and with Kip, we were able to go through several iterations of the model, looking at several different pipe sizes, and I would tell you the biggest component of the overall water system itself is with the initial phase of construction, we will be making a loop through the site and tying back into the Sturman water system located farther to the north. And what that effectively does, it creates that additional, southerly loop for Woodland Park that makes the connection and starts to minimize the existing dead-end system that's currently servicing the hospital right now. With future development, and as we've shown conceptually on our plans, as even this residential area comes online down along through here, we'll be extending additional loops, which will even further start to reduce that overall dead-end length servicing the hospital. And so we were very pleased, working with city staff, that we were able to get to a point that everyone was in agreement that with the pipe sizes, meeting all fire flows, meeting minimum pressure requirements, we were able to propose a system that everyone was in agreement with would service this particular site. And then the last slide I have is the preliminary plat. Once again, a lot of information on this particular sheet, sort of a recompilation of a lot of what's on the development plan. Once again, showing the right-of-way dedication along Trout Creek Road, showing the street sections for the various areas along through here, and then showing all of the utility corridors proposed for the public sanitary and water system going through the property, including easements that are being granted, third-party easements that are being granted along this edge of the property here, based upon the potential of being able to service the existing residential areas along and through here. So with that, that is the end of my presentation. If there's any questions, I can answer them now, or...
Anybody have any questions at this point? No?
Thank you.
We'll just minimize Kyle's presentation here, and if you would like to get out your staff report and follow along with the compliance to the code, I am going to begin on bottom of page 2 and up to page 3. Beginning with the purpose of a PUD, which is to provide more flexibility and latitude in design, a greater variety of principal of uses, accessory and primary, and to encourage initiative and more effective allocation and creative development of parks, recreation, and open space. The staff analysis proposes that this project, being a mixed-use project, meets the purpose of a PUD with the application of greater flexibility, design, a variety of principal and accessory uses, and the preservation of significant open space. So next, the code asks, where can districts of this nature be established? And the introductory paragraph talks about being held by a single owner or under unified control, that the provisions of the title are accomplished, that there is an acceptable relationship to the major traffic thoroughfare plan and the land use plan, and that it is the proper size and spacing for a PUD district to keep from overcapacitating utility lines. With that, the analysis is that the Womack property is held in common ownership and under unified control. All provisions of the PUD chapter have been met, and that the acceptable relationship to a major thoroughfare plan does exist, and it has been verified by a traffic analysis that was completed by LSC Transportation Consultants back in September. The city and CDOT have reviewed LSC's study and agree with their conclusions that all vehicular movements at the analyzed intersections, that's at US 24 and Trout Creek Road, are projected to operate at an acceptable level of service. Also, under this section, this proposal is an acceptable relationship to the city's land use plan. Our comprehensive plan map designates the site as a mixed-use location, which is compatible with the PUD-PBD zone, and that we've also analyzed the capacity of the utility lines and have verified that the water and wastewater analysis has the capacity to serve this project, and also, as you heard Mr. Campbell say, it helps with the capacity for the hospital. The applicant made contact with electric and natural gas providers, and they too have the capacity to serve. So moving on to page 4 of the staff report, these are the requirements for approval of a PUD, and our code says that one of 4 of the conditions must be met in this section, and this proposal directly meets condition C, which states that the property is adjacent or across the street from property which has been developed or redeveloped under a PUD, and it is determined that the PUD will contribute to the maintenance of the amenities and values of the neighboring property. And so just to show you, according to our current zoning map, the property that is shown in green, the subject property, is across the street from the existing Sturman property that was zoned a PUD in 1995. This project, however, does secondarily also meet the other 3 conditions. First, condition A, by preserving several of the unique physical features, such as the floodplain, the 3 ponds, the wetlands, and forested area, with 116 acres of the area will be undisturbed, out of the total of 147. Condition B is also met because there are 4 bunkhouses and 1 historic cabin on the site. The applicant is proposing to preserve those or protect them. And then lastly, condition E is also met by the unique urban design that relates to the adjoining properties by having well-designed buildings. There's a 100-foot no-build buffer adjacent to the Westwood Lakes properties. The lighting fixtures will have full cut-off shields and very nicely designed. And there is also a sensitivity toward noise reduction, traffic impacts, open space, and wildlife protection. And I'll talk about those in a little more detail later. Also under the requirements for approval, item E is for a planned business development, and we consider the Bible College a business development, even though it is an educational institution and that it is a tax-exempt development for the most part. And there are 3 criteria under item E. All 3 must be met. The first is that it shall maintain or enhance the environmental integrity of the city and the vicinity. And this proposal accomplishes that by several ways. First of all, the ponds and the floodplain and other environmentally sensitive areas on the site are preserved or protected. And then also that there was a Phase 1 environmental assessment that was completed and placed in your packets. This is to determine whether there are any recognized environmental conditions existing on the property. It was concluded by the EA that no environmental areas of concern were identified within the study area. So we believe that item E1 was met to maintain the environmental integrity of the site. Item E2 is to determine its compatibility with the vicinity existing and proposed uses, and through good design as well as mitigating the potential impacts, we believe this item has met. Specifically through the architecture that Mr. Prather showed you, that it will represent a lodge-style type architecture complementary to Woodland Park's architectural themes. The buildings will use earth tone colors and materials, including moss rock, peeled logs, wood components, and stucco. The design characteristics and materials were purposely selected to help mitigate the impacts on the adjoining property owners. The setbacks and building heights have also been carefully thought through. First of all is the 100-foot setback no build area adjacent to Westwood Lake subdivision, and then there is a 25-foot setback on the balance of the property. The maximum height, building height, is 60 feet. That's a 3-story building for administrative offices. It will be located toward the center of the site, so therefore it will not impact any views or of the area. The main building, the sanctuary, is 54 feet in height. It is partially built into the hillside to take advantage of those slopes, and once again, no views of Pikes Peak from the existing residence will be affected by these heights. Continuing on with the analysis, the exterior lighting. There has been a photometric plan as well as the lighting fixture specifications submitted. They do meet the dark sky standards with full cutoff shields. The grading and landscaping plans have also been carefully thought out so to help mitigate the potential vehicle headlights on the west side of the building. With respect to noise, much of the activity will take place within the contained building of the classrooms and the auditorium, offices, banquet hall. There's also a parking garage in the main building. The outdoor pavilion and amphitheater is located in a natural bowl that is also toward the center of the property, and there is a very thick buffer of spruce trees between the pavilion and the Westwood Lakes neighborhood, and that the student housing is also located a significant distance away from Westwood Lakes subdivision. Continuing on with traffic and analysis, which was already mentioned, LSC determined that with the improvements to Trout Creek Road and the intersection to US 24, the adjacent streets will have the capacity to handle these anticipated increases in traffic, which are projected for the build-out. The new private road is designed with an optional gravel lane. This will accommodate traffic increases during special events or emergency situations. The applicant is also required to prohibit access with locked gate to the site from the Westwood Lakes roads abutting the property, with the exception of Vista Lane, which will provide for an emergency service. With respect to drainage, an on-site detention system that Mr. Campbell spoke about is designed to carry the runoff into the main detention facility that will detain and release the runoff at or below historic rates. There's also low-impact development techniques are being encouraged, and water quality measures will be incorporated to protect groundwater. With respect to the water and wastewater capacity, you have a memo from former Utilities Director Jim Schultz from last August, who confirmed that the city's water and wastewater service and systems have the capacity to serve this project. The applicant is required to install all on-site water and wastewater extensions, as well as a water line or loop connection to Innovation Way near the Sturman's headquarters. The fire protection has been thoroughly studied, and the buildings will all be constructed in accordance to the 2003 International Fire Code, fully sprinkled, etc. There will be adequate fire protection with water line looping, the number and spacing of the hydrants, and the applicant is also required to prepare a wildfire protection plan and implement that protection plan within a certain period of time. We'll review that condition, I believe is condition number 11. And I might add here that we also walked the site Monday afternoon with the local forest ranger, and so he was quite pleased to hear that there was going to be a wildfire protection plan and implementation program, as well as the factors that will be implemented for wildlife protection. The Division of Parks and Wildlife did look at this proposed project and made a few suggestions. First was to keep the fencing to a minimum, but if fencing is planned to be installed, to use wildlife-friendly fencing. The applicant is planning on implementing that recommendation. Division of Wildlife also had a second recommendation, hoping that maybe construction could be limited out to times with which elk are not calving. This would be difficult to adhere to since we have such a short construction season. However, the applicant did agree that bear prevention garbage containers or bear-proof containers and bird feeders would be prohibited, and they will follow that. So they do want to be good neighbors with the wildlife. Moving on to item number 3, in a PBD, it shall identify economic development. You have a full report from Mr. Anderson in your packet, and just some highlights from that report. It's expected that in 2014 there could be potential of sales tax and use tax increase of over $122,000 in 2014. There's also a projected increase of new jobs and their salaries, approximately 66 jobs in the first year, with a payroll of $2.6 million. Construction expenditures of more than $86 million for the build-out of this project. The operations and maintenance expenditures of the project could be up to $1.6 million in 2014. Also, there is a proposal that the housing portion, the student housing, will be privatized and therefore taxed, and over an 11-year period could potentially generate $3.48 million to the school district, city, county, and other taxing entities. There's some not so easily quantifiable benefits, such as helping to diversify the local economy, with the introduction of higher education industry that would provide a year-round operation. The college is also planning on hosting a number of conferences in the summer or during the year, which will attract visitors to our area, and they will see what a desirable place to live and work this is. So that is a summary of the requirements for approval, and that it does meet all the planned business development conditions under item E. Moving on to the final plan requirements for approval, and I'm on page 7 now of the staff report. Paragraph A talks about unacceptable land planning practices that avoid congestion to public streets and highways, conserve the values of the surrounding properties, and protect against fire and other hazards. So with that, the staff has analyzed the project, which meets the requirements for acceptable land planning practices, promotes public health, safety, and welfare through good site planning and aesthetically pleasing buildings. The development plan addresses the traffic impact by constructing both on-site and off-site improvements to facilitate the flow of vehicles. The development conserves surrounding property values as an educational and religious institution that has quality design and architecture. It also protects against fire and other hazards by meeting the 2003 International Fire Code, local fire protection standards, drainage, flood control specifications, and provides for an emergency access and widening of the main access drive. Moving on to item B in the final plan requirements approval. This item B is that there is a final plan submitted and that it addresses all the information. There are 15 various aspects that need to be identified on the final plan. The applicant has complied with this by submitting those complete development plans with the information, and in addition, the applicant did provide an excellent final plan narrative for each of these sections under 18.30 in section 3 of your binder. Moving on to the next section in the PUD talks about the common open space requirement. The common open space, as it's defined in this section of the code, eliminates easements and drainage ways and road rights of ways. So when you back out all of that area, the common open space for this project equals 62.36 acres. That is 42% of the entire site. The requirement with the city's PUD is that at least 35% of the site be designated as common open space. And for a project that is 100 to 200 acres, so with this project at 147 total acres, they're setting aside 42% of the area, so it meets the gross area requirement. Next condition or section in the PUD deals with dimensional standards. Those are standards that relate to the lot area per dwelling unit, the maximum density permitted, and in a PUD, our maximum density is 2 units per acre. The maximum percentage of lot coverage by buildings, the maximum height of buildings, the minimum frontage of lots, and the minimum setbacks for side and rear. And so these dimensional standards for this project are somewhat unique. First of all, there are not permanent housing being proposed, so it is not being subdivided, which you would typically see in a residential development for permanent housing. Rather, this is being proposed to have 300 student housing units with a maximum of 500 individuals, adults, living on the campus. Is planned in harmony with the surrounding areas and the intent and purpose of this chapter, as well as serviceability. The maximum density of 300 housing units is in line with the maximum density of 2 units per acre, 147-acre tract. The maximum percentage of lot coverage by buildings and structures and impervious surface is proposed to be 14.8% of the site. This is appropriate for a college campus, student housing, administration building, and accessory uses. The maximum heights, which I've already spoken to, 60 feet maximum height for the administration building, 54 for the main building, and then your table also lists the other heights for student housing, etc. That they are appropriate since they don't block any views of Pikes Peak, nor are they excessive. The minimum frontage does not apply since this tract will remain as a single tract, as one large lot. It has adequate frontage on Highway 24 and Trout Creek Road. With respect to the setbacks, those do not apply also because we don't have individual lots, but we do have setbacks around the perimeter of the property, which relate to preserving the buffer along Westwood Lakes subdivision and the 25-foot setback around the remaining property. So those are the dimensional standards that are proposed and are acceptable. With respect to parking, this must be in compliance with our Chapter 18.39 for residential and non-residential uses. The proposal complies. Due to the unique mix of uses within the main building, the student housing, the accessory uses, the applicant has proposed a customized parking formula for each building that is purely acceptable with the city because in that section 1839 it does recognize that our table of uses cannot always predict or cover every possible situation for parking. For example, we don't have a student housing parking formula. So the planning department is authorized to recommend parking requirements using the table of parking as a guide. We believe that the applicant's proposed parking formula is adequate and agrees with the development plan. That's the parking. Moving on to landscaping, it calls for an adequate landscaping plan, and the applicant has submitted a preliminary landscaping plan. It meets the city's design standards for parking lots and site landscaping. The plan proposes the use of hardy native trees, shrubs, grasses, which will accent the buildings and the parking lots and roadways. The plantings have been included strategically and located to minimize and soften the development from the adjacent properties. Those are the standards within the PUD, Planned Unit Development, and Planned Business Development. PUDs are listed as permitted conditionally in our zoning code. So as a result, we also look at the conditional use or the special use criteria. There are 11 criteria in those standards in section 18.57 or and Section 18.61. The reason why we're looking at special use is because schools, universities, colleges of an educational nature are considered a special use, and if they are proposed as part of a PUD, then you simply apply the 11 criteria, which are the same for conditional use. So, starting off with the first in the 11 criteria, the first is that the proposed development shall have a demonstrated direct need to be located at the proposed location. The Charis Bible College provides a unique educational and religious institution on the western edge of Woodland Park. The sanctuary and its associated uses are situated on a 147-acre tract that has ample area and serviceability and design to complement the community's managed growth goals and objectives. There is a demonstrated economic benefit to the development and the build-out with 2,500 college students and annual conferences. The potential impacts to the environment and surrounding neighborhood with traffic, drainage, noise, lights, utilities, fire protection, and wildlife have been adequately mitigated. Number 2 deals with that the development shall not endanger the public health and welfare. This proposal complies. The proposed development protects against fire or other hazards by meeting the 2003 International Code, the local fire protection standards and drainage criteria, and a wildfire protection plan is required to be developed and implemented within a reasonable period of time. Conditional use and special use criteria number 3. This is that it shall not injure the value of the vicinity properties. The development plan conserves the surrounding property values as an educational and religious institution that has quality design and architecture, and also potentially the potential development impacts have been mitigated. That the development shall be in harmony with the area with which it's located. It's quite common for colleges, college campuses, or religious institutions to be located adjacent to residential neighborhoods, both urban and rural communities. They make great neighbors. The student housing is planned in a clustered approach to give a village feel and is a significant distance away from the Westwood Lakes subdivision. The main building is aesthetically pleasing in its design and is built into the hillside to take advantage of the slopes. The buffer will protect trees on the southern boundary line and provides for a no-build adjacent to the Westwood Lakes subdivision. The careful placement and selection of the lighting fixtures as well as the full cutoffs also address lighting. Number 5 is that this project shall conform to the city's plans that are in place, and it does conform to the city's 2010 comprehensive plan, beginning with 2 guiding principles, which are to sustain Woodland Park's economic diversity and vitality, and to promote opportunities for lifelong learning. It also conforms to several of the comprehensive plan overarching goals. First, with the land use and growth goal, that it provides for opportunities for growth and development while preserving community environmental quality. Community character and design. Goal number 1 states that promotes design efforts that enhances Woodland Park's small-town atmosphere and provides present-day conveniences while protecting the mountain environment, wildlife, scenic beauty, and that surround the community. Economic development goal number 1 is to provide enhanced job opportunities in the area, expand the availability of products, services, and amenities in the community, and facilitate the export of products, services, and experiences to import new dollars. Sustainable environment goal is protect and enhance the health and livability of Woodland Park's natural and human environments. Water goal number 2 is to optimize the city's existing water resources to make water available to support the city's highest priority land uses and housing needs. Transportation goal number 1 is to promote multimodal transportation network that facilitates safe and efficient movement throughout the community. This project will add an extension of the trail connection from the highway along Trout Creek Road. Drainage goal number 1, Woodland Park will manage stormwater to prevent erosion and flooding and to protect water quality and downstream users. And a few more goals in parks, trails, and open space to develop and enhance Woodland Park's sense of place, quality of life by continuing to enhance the city parks, in this case, the trails and open space system. Education goal number 1 is Woodland Park will become an educational city, and the community heritage goal, Woodland Park community members embrace and become part of the local history and understand the importance of protecting and preserving it. As mentioned earlier, the compliance with the comp plan map, which designates the site as mixed use, and that is compatible with the PUD-PBD proposal. Item number 6 is that the project conform to the provisions and standards and requirements of the city regulations. This development complies, that it will be constructed in accordance with all city regulations, including zoning, subdivision regulations, engineering specifications, utilities and drainage, and the international building codes. Number 7 is to accommodate on-site and off-site traffic generation. We believe that with the improvements proposed at the intersection of Highway 24 and Trout Creek Road, as well as the improvements on site, that it will operate at acceptable levels. And Chris can speak to that more if you would like more information on the traffic. With regard to an appropriate construction for topography, surface drainage, soil potentials, natural and man-made hazards, streams, and environmental significance, a drainage report and access road flood study, as well as a Phase 1 environmental assessment have all been completed. This is to ensure that the development is designed and constructed in regard to the topography, surface drainage, soils potential, man-made and natural hazards, streams, and environmental significant features. Number 9 deals with the water supply, wastewater disposal, solid waste disposal, air quality, as well as surface water drainage. It complies in that the utilities directors have concluded that the city's water and wastewater systems have the capacity to serve. The applicant plans to utilize bear-proof dumpsters. Those will be enclosed, hidden from sight as far as the solid waste disposal. And air quality will not be significantly impacted with the proposed use. And the surface water drainage has been addressed adequately with the drainage report and access road flood study. Okay, number 10. This deals with that the development will not unduly increase the public danger for fire, explosion, or other hazards. As mentioned earlier, this will be in compliance with the international building codes as well as the fire codes and all city regulations and any other state and federal safety regulations for the construction of this project. Lastly, criterion 11 deals with the architectural design schemes. The overall development will have a lodge-style complementary with Woodland Park's mountain landscape. The campus buildings will use earth tone materials, including moss rock, peeled logs, wood components, and stucco. Ample landscaping is proposed to buffer the main building and soften the parking lots, and the design characteristics and materials were purposely selected to mitigate the impacts of the adjacent properties. So in summary, staff believes that the 11 criteria for both conditional and special use have been met. Moving on to the preliminary plat. The preliminary plat for subdivision policies is to evaluate whether the land can be used safely for building purposes, and that provisions have been made for drainage and water and sewage and public improvement. This preliminary plat or development design complies by meeting the city standards for health, safety, and welfare of the subdivision's occupants. The construction will meet the current building codes as well as the International Fire Code and fire flow and duration requirements. The improved ingress-egress with a 3-lane roadway will assist with those public improvements. There's an emergency access provided on the west side of the sanctuary. The wildfire protection plan is required. The drainage plan and flood studies are complete, and provisions for water and other public improvements have already been discussed. The preliminary plat meets the technical information that's provided in Chapter 1720. This is information that deals with the hearing process, the supplemental information, and general preliminary plat regulations. It is drawn in conformance with the applicable sections of this chapter. And then as far as design standards for the preliminary plat, this deals with such things as easements, lots, blocks, streets, designs for grades, widths, right-of-way. Very few of these standards apply to this plat due to the fact that there are private roads, there are no residential lots that are being proposed on the site, since it's going to remain as a single lot. The plat complies with the applicable design standards, such as adequate easements and grades on the private road. And there's also a note here, in a PUD, the applicant can propose variations of these design standards. The last section that I'd like to quickly run through is that after public comment and you have had all your questions answered and you begin to deliberate on this case, the staff would like to recommend approval of the PUD-PBD, that it qualifies for a PUD district, and approval of the rezoning with 13 conditions on the final plan. Most of these are fairly standard in this portion of the process. I mentioned that there was a preliminary landscape plan. The next step would be that a final landscape plan would be submitted and reviewed by staff prior to issuance of a zoning development permit. That would be, should this project be granted its PUD and final plan approval and the preliminary plat approval, then it would move to developing the construction drawings and then applying for a zoning development permit that would be issued by staff to move forward with construction. So just an idea of the next steps. But they would have to submit a final landscaping plan. There would also be a need for a final grading plan that meets with the city engineer's approval. A final drainage report and plan would be signed off on prior to the issuance of a zoning development permit for any land disturbing activity associated with the first phase of development. We'd also request a final photometric plan. Condition number 5 deals with the flood hazard development permit. You will be seeing that in conjunction with the floodplain, and that will come before you. There will also be the necessary permits from the Army Corps of Engineers for any construction within the designated wetlands on the property. Condition number 6 is that the applicant agrees to construct all the necessary road and signalization improvements to Trout Creek Road and US 24, and that an access permit will be obtained. Condition number 7 deals with the construction drawings for utilities prior to utility construction. Condition number 8 is an update of the Phase 1 environmental assessment. Condition number 9 is the payment of the water development fee, which is assessed at $2,000 per acre for the commercial developed sites prior to the recording of the final plat. Number 10 deals with other development and impact fees associated with this project. They include water and wastewater taps, stormwater capital fees, transportation capital fees, utility reimbursement fees, use tax on taxable portion of construction, and any other applicable fees that may arise. Number 11 is the wildfire protection plan that will be approved by the fire district as well. And number 12 is the submittal of a final plat prior to a certificate of occupancy. And number 13 is the compliance with the Teller County requirements that were detailed in a letter from the Teller County Community Development Services dated March 20th, 2011. A summary of that is the use of Vista Lane as a reciprocal cross-access easement for emergency services only, no construction of any structures within the 100-foot no-build buffer, and that they had requested 2 specific amendments to the annexation agreement regarding the use of Vista Lane and the 100-foot buffer. So those are the 13 conditions of approval for the zoning and the final plat. Your second motion this evening would deal with a recommendation for approval of the preliminary plat, and I needed to add, with the adjustment to the Trout Creek Road boundary line that Mr. Campbell talked about and the dedication of the road right-of-way. Just want to make sure that got in there, even though the preliminary plat has been submitted showing that is what they plan on doing. So thank you for bearing with me going through the 18-page staff report and the compliance with the code, and we would now open it up for questions or with whatever you would like.
Any questions? There's a lot of stuff.
I have one question for staff. Has the annexation parcel been officially annexed into the city?
It is.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I have several questions for staff. Before I ask those questions, I do want to acknowledge the excellent work of staff and the applicant. Very thorough. Almost not enough hours in the day to look at it all, but I tried. First question, Sally, and I think I'll hold my questions for the applicant until page 3. About the middle of the page, talking about vehicular movements that are operated except for the levels of risk during peak hours to the year 2030. What happens in 2030?
We'll let the transportation...
It's on a later, yeah.
And I believe that that's their standard future lookout for, that's what CDOT requires you to do, is look at 20-year period.
So the road bed doesn't collapse in 2030, it will disappear? Okay. Just a half second here. Page 5, bottom of page 5, setbacks and building heights. The 100-foot buffer, the so-called no-build area, is a 100-foot no-build area, would you consider that to be pretty standard, or is it more than normal, or can you help me out there in terms of its relative value?
Our typical setbacks are 25 feet, so this is 3 times the typical. The largest setback that we do have would be a 50-foot setback if it were a service commercial project from the frontage. This is pretty much a side setback, not even a front yard setback. So a 100-foot buffer is an ample, atypical setback.
Page 6, under noise, this is the second sentence. Vehicular noise will be reduced to the posted low speeds to the primary parking area, etc., etc. As I recall, when the applicant was in here sometime last year, maybe 6, 7, 8 months ago, I asked the question about whether they had their own security on site, and the answer was yes, several security personnel. Do you think that the posted low speeds, which evidently are important in keeping noise down, do you think will those be adhered to? I mean, clearly it's private property, and Woodland Park Police don't have any enforcement of traffic, or is that something we should just hold?
Yeah, we can.
Hold? Okay.
I see Larry wanting to answer
Okay.
that question.
The next paragraph down, traffic and access. And maybe this is a question that'll be answered. I wondered whether the traffic from the 4 to 6, average 5 number of events with roughly a couple of thousand people there, whether all those vehicles were considered in that. And also, just a note to that, as I recall, we recently approved the Dollar Store O'Reilly, which generated, I don't remember, something less than 1,000 trips on the average weekday. Now, granted, that's kind of downstream of the 24 by whatever it is, a mile, but there's more vehicles, clearly. At some point in time, I'd like to be able to question the folks who prepared the economic assumptions, particularly with respect to the property tax revenue, etc. I also had a question about the nature of this higher education facility, but I think that should be directed to somebody who knows more about the students, the curriculum, how often they go, is there a degree, is it an accredited college, etc., etc. You'll be happy to see I did actually read this. Okay, that question was answered. And then I have a general question about the staff recommendation on the first motion. your microphone. I knew you were next.
Quick question for staff, and this is mostly for my information. What is the maximum building height allowed in the city at this time?
In the central business district and other commercial is 35 feet. That's the maximum.
And I understand that this is located in the center of the property, and that's probably less of a concern, but that was partly for my information. I also have another brief comment on the staff report. In two places, you indicated that views of Pikes Peak were not obstructed. I think there was also some concern about obstruction of the view of the Rampart Range from some of the residents in the area, and I think that should be at least noticed somewhere in this report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paula?
I did. I had a couple. One was on the wildlife protection plan. So it says 10% of the plan to be implemented in the first year. Do we have a layout for 100% completion of the plan?
When I met with the fire chief, I asked him, what is it that you would like to see in this plan for implementation? And so he didn't want to prescribe or recommend a specific guideline without seeing the plan first. So the applicant is going to work with the Coalition for the Upper South Platte. Their CUSP has done a number of these community wildfire protection plans, and they will lay out the implementation plan that then will be reviewed by the fire chief. So his first recommendation was, let's at least get 10% of the plan done in the first year, and then see if we can't ramp that up and have it completed within a certain period of time, like 4 or 5 years. But he didn't want to prescribe a specific approach. He wanted to see the plan first and then make comments and tweak it from there. So that's why it's kind of vague.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not sure if this is a question for staff. I'm going to throw it out there and we'll decide where it goes. On page 7, under the plan business development provides economic development opportunities. There's a note, increase the number of new jobs and salary, 66 jobs in the first year. Are those jobs, I'm assuming that because it's moving, that some of the staff is going to stay with the ministry and come up here and work. So is that above and beyond the staff that's already part of the ministry, or I guess?
That would be a question for...
Okay, so we'll say that.
It's
Okay.
operational.
All right, that's it for me.
Diane? No? Larry?
I have some comments, statements, and questions I'm going to hold until after I hear public comment.
I have one question that may be directed towards Kyle, and also it's partially related to phasing in student housing. As that occurs on site, it looks like that's all supposed to occur by 2013, or starting in 2013. And what occurs along Highway 24 with relation to no fences or limited fencing and buffering for wildlife movement through the property? Is there going to be any sort of buffer treatment separating that housing portion from that corridor through Highway 24? And that's going to be it for me.
Do you want to address that now, Kyle, or you can come to the podium and...
We're going to wait till the end. How do you...
No, you can come up now and...
Whenever you want to do it.
And address her question, and then I'm sure you'll be back and forth several times, so...
Based upon what's reflected on the final plan, we've shown very specific clouded areas, and that's indicative of future plans being submitted for review by staff. And so, right now, there is no proposal for specific orientation or housing locations. And so your questions are very good, but right now, we're looking at a big bubble right now. So I think there's going to be ample time with future submittals to be able to come back and address those as staff reviews those specific plans. And I made a note of your comment, and I think that's something that we can look at.
So, I think it's probably more directed towards what the final landscape plan ends up being, because that will be a transitional edge treatment of some kind.
The staff will be very sensitive to what, how the housing appears on the highway side. And landscaping will be an important piece of that.
Good. Thank you, Carl.
I had a question. Which of the bubbles will be developed first?
You know,
The floor bubble or the interior bubble?
there's the Highway 24 bubble, and then there's the northerly bubble, not to be all technical. Right now, they're shown essentially in the same phase, so there has not been a determination yet, will they happen concurrently, will they happen separately, and so that's been left open. So as those areas are being looked at, once again, as we work with city staff, we don't really have an answer for that right now.
What would be a reason to pick one bubble over the other to break ground?
Some of it might have to do, potentially with visibility. Some of it might have to be with what the orientation, what the buildings are. And so if there's a lot of construction potentially taking place with the Charis Bible College, they might not want to be constructing on the north piece right away. So there's a number of factors that as the Bible College starts to be constructed and the residential is looked at, has to be factored in. And probably there's not a desire to put all 300 units on the ground at one time. And so does it make sense to start with 50 or 100 or 150? So there's a lot of questions that are still yet to be answered as it relates to the residential component.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions for staff? You don't have any? We'll say mine go last.
I had one, I guess, with regard to the traffic study. I assume that is considered we've got a 2,500 person auditorium there, and if you have a big event there, I assume the traffic study has assumed the impact of that on the surrounding roads and traffic flow.
Chris might want to address that specifically. There's some specific comments in your packet about the special event. And the recommendation is that special event traffic control plans are recommended for those special events rather than being part of the typical site operations.
Do the 500 spaces inside parking spaces, will there be overflow parking? Do they accommodate the typical event, do you think? Or have you...
If you would state your name again.
Chris McGranahan, LSC Transportation Consultants. We're at 516 North Cajon in Colorado Springs. I'll answer this question first, and then there were a few others from Commissioner Rollinger that I'll get to also. There is an acknowledgement in the traffic study of 3 separate phases. They don't necessarily correspond to the phases you've heard Laura tonight. They're more for CDOT's benefit. The first phase in the traffic study was more or less everything that's going to happen in the next few years. And the second phase was some potentially long-term type things that could happen down the road, but they're not really that concrete right now. So we just kind of gave CDOT a picture of what might happen over time. And the third scenario we looked at was a special event in the auditorium. When that 2,500 seats is full with a special event. And we looked at the trip generation from that event, and it became very clear to us that while the normal operations can easily be handled with some data, just some improvements at the traffic signal and Trout Creek Road, that the special event would require either special signal timing or some special traffic control, and it didn't make a lot of sense to build a massive roadway system to handle 5 or 6 events a year. So in those situations, we typically work with CDOT, in this case the city, to come up with a special event traffic control plan. That could include hiring off-duty police officers, could include a modified traffic signal timing plan, it could include event signing, it could also include, on a particular event, it could include shuttling of guests. I mean, it's something that we have to work with the applicant, but that may be one of the end results of that coordination, is that maybe there's some shuttling that happens. If there's large amounts of people, say, flying to the Colorado Springs Airport and are going to come up for an event, doesn't make sense for them to all rent cars and drive up to the site. That doesn't help our traffic, and it doesn't help our parking. So having a system, a shuttle system of some sort, is something we've talked about internally, but we formalized in any kind of a special event traffic control plan. The other two questions I've heard from Commissioner Rollinger, one was why 2030? That's directly out of the CDOT has a state highway access code that's been adopted by the State Highway Transportation Commission. And what they want us to do is not only look at the existing traffic and what our impact will be on existing traffic, but what are the impacts over a 20-year period. So what we have to do is we have to work with CDOT to determine what's going to happen to the existing traffic on Highway 24, whether or not if this project does not happen, what's going to happen. So we worked with CDOT, and it's pretty aggressive growth on 24 that they had us look at. Basically, we had to look at nearly a doubling of traffic that's out there now, and then add our traffic to it. And then the proposal that we showed, the recommended improvements that we show, would mitigate that traffic for our side road. Basically, the improvement is, right now, as you come out to Highway 24, as you're on Trout Creek Road, as you approach Highway 24, there's one single lane. You turn left, through or right out of that lane. There's a little bit of room for someone that wants to go right that can kind of sneak off to the right. But what we're proposing and what CDOT has agreed to is that we build a very long left turn lane to add, so there's basically two left turn lanes. And we would modify the traffic signal so that the light comes on, it's a lot longer than it is now, and those cars can progress out of the site at a reasonable rate, and CDOT has accepted that. They've actually offered an access permit to us, which we've had for several months. So what that means is if my client decides to, we could go to the city and say, here's our permit from CDOT. We think it's acceptable. If the city agrees and signs the permit, we've got our permit. So I've actually got that in my packet tonight. So we anticipate presenting that to Mr. Alsbach here shortly and having the city sign that. And so then we'll basically have a contract or an access permit with CDOT to make those improvements. And I think the second question you had was related to what I talked about first with the special event, so I think that more or less got addressed already. So, and I'm available to answer any more questions now or as they come up.
So the traffic control during the special events, any additional labor costs or signage or any other costs would be borne by the applicant?
That's typically what happens. It's part of the special event traffic control plan, which can be negotiated between the city, the CDOT, and the applicant. Typically, the applicant bears that cost. For those of you who are familiar with Colorado Springs, there's a couple large religious organizations in Colorado Springs that have big events, and they hire Colorado Springs police officers and have special event network. They do a pretty good job of directing traffic. So,
thank you. I just had one question for Kip and Bill. Are you guys satisfied with your side of the things? Everything meets, you guys are happy with the way things are being handled?
I'll go first, give Kip a little extra time since he's the dude. The traffic study, yes, absolutely. We've worked with LSC, we've gone back and forth with CDOT. We believe we have an acceptable plan that's workable. As far as drainage, which is my other area of expertise and interest, this development far exceeds our current city standards, both for detention requirements and water quality. And plus they've been agreeable to look at low-impact development techniques. So, absolutely.
Okay. Kip?
In relationship to the water system, their proposed system, we work very well and also benefit the hospital as well. So, that connection is true. And then in regards to the sanitary sewer system, there's just a couple minor adjustments that need to be made to that. And those will be addressed in the final review.
Kip, could you explain to those of us who are not engineers the significance of the loop or looping that was mentioned several times in terms of the water?
The current water line that runs through there now goes up to the hospital, and for them to tie into that and serve that facility, it'd be a dead end on their part. So if they would tie into the Sturman, which is up to the north there, it creates a big loop for the ministry and better flows for the hospital because the hospital is on a dead end. Does that answer your question?
Okay. More water. Is that the bottom line? Okay. Thank you.
The 100-foot buffer, just for my edification, I didn't see, or I didn't detect anything other than just leaving that particular 100 feet natural. There's no planned enhancement of the buffer at all? Is that?
Not at this point, no. There
Okay,
may
so-
be some limited fencing applied on the west side.
Okay.
Is there anybody, I believe, Tom, you had some questions for the applicant?
About the nature of the institution, et cetera, just so I can get a better understanding of what goes on up there?
Go ahead, who do you want to ask?
Oh, well, whoever can answer questions about curriculum, students, et cetera, et cetera. And these aren't terribly piercing questions, but, do I understand correctly, first of all, that it is a 2-year program?
The basic program is a 2-year program. There is a 3rd year, which is an apprenticeship, which specializes in various areas of ministry.
And the curriculum, if you could describe it just in very, very general terms, just so I have an understanding.
The curriculum is a general Bible-based curriculum. There are no textbooks. The Bible is the only textbook. There are syllabuses that are provided by each individual instructor in the class. So the curriculum is I guess, a non-traditional and non-standardized curriculum.
Is there a degree that's offered, upon graduation, or?
There is no associate degree or other degree in that term. The people that graduate from the 2-year program are licensed ministers. They're licensed in the state of Colorado to marry, bury, or perform those type of duties. But there is no formal associate degree associated with the 2-year program.
Are those graduates licensed by virtue of their attendance and successful completion of this program?
That is correct.
Do most of the students possess some type of a college degree, or are they, half high school and junior college folks and half higher ed, or?
Well, the average age is about 42, and you have everything. I'm a college graduate from the Bible College, and I have a college degree. I was the CEO of a hospital, and we have people that go to the Bible College and have graduated that are attorneys, engineers, architects. Some are folks that are right out of high school. So it's a mixed bag.
And my reasons for asking these are get some idea of who will be there, and I'm thinking about the trickle down into the community.
And like I said, the average age is 42. I think the oldest is 89, and probably the youngest is around 17 or 18.
Previously, in some information you folks supplied us 7 or 8 months ago, approximately 50% of the students were married. Has that been updated, or do you think that's still?
That's probably pretty close to the same. We haven't done an updated survey.
Okay.
And that was done, I think, in the fall of 2011.
Right. And approximately 20% of them at that time had children, and that probably hasn't changed all that much either.
Yes, sir.
How many students are enrolled down the hill currently in the, which might call the 2010 school year?
That's about, well, of course, it varies during the year, but I think that the current enrollment's around 450.
Okay. Will the campus conduct classes 12 months a year, or is there a summer break, or?
There is a summer break. The The classes begin generally around the 1st of September or just after Labor Day and conclude about mid-May. There is a short summer session. We have another enrollment period and a group that comes in November as well, and they're able to complete the balance of their curriculum I think in June.
Previously, you supplied information that indicated approximately 77% of the students had a desire to live in, basically live on the campus, I guess, or Woodland Park or its surrounding areas. You think that's still probably about right?
I think that's about right.
Okay. And you also previously supplied information that told us that approximately 27% of the students work full-time and 26% work part-time. So, roughly half of them work at some point in time, part or full. Is that
correct? And I have no reason to think that that's changed since November of 2011.
Just give me about 10 seconds here. And thank you, this has been very helpful. Just, trying to get the profile of, what's there and how it might affect the community. Great. Thank you, sir.
Can you address your speed control question that you had earlier?
Oh, sure.
We do have security staff at our location in Colorado Springs, and we have a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit on campus. I'm not to say that 10-mile-an-hour speed limit will be what we have out here. I'm not sure exactly what it would be, since there's a much longer drive. We do issue citations to employees and to students, and there are consequences for each citation. The students, of course, through the Dean of Men and Women, and then employees through their department managers, up to and including suspension for an exacerbated issue. So we do manage the speed, and we control it to ensure safety.
I just had two other questions. I seem to recall that there wasn't going to be a restaurant, but there would be a snack bar or something similar to that
break area for the students.
Is that still contemplated?
Yes, sir, it is.
With serving?
It'll be kind of a grill type situation, or coffee and that type of thing, and of course vending machines.
Okay. With respect to healthcare, a very popular topic these days, will there be any type of medical care or assistance on the campus, maybe a small infirmary or?
Don't have anything currently, and haven't really explored that.
And I think the reason I mentioned that, of course, the hospital is literally across the street.
Right.
But at some point there will be a lot of folks on that campus.
That's correct.
If these numbers hold up. Originally, I think I saw something like about a projected 4% increase in student population. But the most recent submittal shows that the student population is estimated to grow a little more quickly than that, possibly at 6 or 7%. What do you think? Is that changed, or
I don't really know what numbers you were talking about. I did a projection analysis based on our I think it was 2010 or 2011 student population, and I think it was around a 4 or 5% increase. I'm not sure about the 6 or 7.
I got a number larger than 4 by looking at some of the data behind the economic analysis, and it includes student growth, which is a little bit greater than that, maybe by 2 or 3%. Thank you, sir.
All right. Anyone else?
Can I ask a question? It says some of the students are not children. Where are the children to school?
Are you going to provide that there, or are they going to go in the community, or?
We depend on the community. We don't have any provisions for children.
Do you have any idea of the number of children that might?
I don't off the top of my head, no, ma'am.
Thank you.
Can you answer the staff question that I asked?
Yes, ma'am. We currently have about 40 staff members in the college, and so that would represent roughly 26 additional staff members for the college.
Okay. Thank you.
The 60 jobs, what kinds of jobs are they? I mean, you have there the instructors primarily, or?
No, not primarily. I would say most of them are administrative, from secretarial to operations manager to the administrator of the school.
Average salary?
I couldn't tell you that. I don't know. Not sure.
Those staff members, are those full-time equivalents, FTEs, or are those?
Yes, so these are full-time. All these are full-time positions.
66 polls, yeah, okay.
So just to clarify, the 66 include the 40 current?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Anybody else? Any other comments or questions for the applicant? Staff?
Just the economic issues that I mentioned previously.
Okay, well, probably ought to have him come up and, if you would, sir, state your name for the record.
Yes, my name is Mickey Anderson. I'm a partner with the firm of Summit Economics LLC, which is based in Colorado Springs. We did prepare the economic analysis as part of your package. We are prepared to address any questions you might have.
Thank you. I think my questions are primarily in the area of property taxes. Do you know what the current property taxes are? On either all or the largest portion of the property?
Well, the property right now is based on our check of the assessor's records, is the actual taxes paid are zero. Simply because it is a nonprofit institution, and as a result of that, or it's owned by a nonprofit entity, and as a result of that, there are no property taxes today. However, in our economic analysis, you may have noted that we do include some property tax revenue going forward. And the reason we do that is because the on-campus housing will be owned by a for-profit entity is what the intent is. And the estimated cost of that housing is about $18 million, or roughly about $106,000 a unit. Our analysis assumed 170 units would be constructed. It would be in place during the first 11 years of the project, although it's our understanding the plan does allow up to 300 units. Applying the appropriate residential assessment ratio as well as the applicable current mill levy rates, it does generate property tax revenue, as you probably noted in the analysis. For example, in 2015, that property alone will generate about $61,000 in property tax revenue.
Have you ever thought about comparing the incremental property tax revenue from the privately owned residential portion to the incremental cost to several, well, not only the city, but the special taxing districts, particularly the school, the library, maybe to a lesser degree the ambulance service?
Well, the scope of our analysis was strictly to look at the economic impacts as well as the revenue impacts that result from the economic impacts. It was not a full fiscal impact analysis, which I think is what you're referring to, that would look at the expenditure side of the equation, which obviously is something that city staff can look at, or obviously if that's something that was everyone was interested in having performed at a future date, that could be performed. But that was not a part of the scope of this analysis. However, In our report on page 19, we did sum up the property tax revenue for all the various entities between the years of 2013 and 2022, which was roughly the period of the analysis. And you'll note on page 19, the grand total property tax revenue during that period is about $3.5 million. A lion's share of it goes to the Woodland Park School District at about $1.4 million. Following that, we have the City of Woodland Park at about $660,000, and then we have Teller County at about $600,000.
Right. I think that's an interesting question, though. You know, with those additional revenues of approximately $300,000 a year, would that be sufficient to offset the, what's called the incremental cost of having several hundred more folks living in Woodland Park, some of them with children, some of them using the library, et cetera?
Well, I think doing that comparison may be understating the revenue that's available, because you need to include the sales tax revenue in addition to the property tax revenue. Just to give you an idea, in addition to that property tax revenue, the sales tax revenue to the City of Woodland Park would be about $1.1 million over an 11-year period. Teller County would be another $400,000 in addition to that. But to address your question about, how does that compare to the cost of services, I'm not sure how to address that, simply because you'd have to look at the cost on the margin. What would it cost the City of Woodland Park and all the other entities? I would note that in some of the initial comments that were received that the applicant had received from the various governmental entities, that the school district actually was very interested in the project. It was interested in additional tax base that would result, property tax revenue, as well as the potential for additional students.
Is the calculation that I referred to, is it when you've done before? Is it something that can be done?
It is something that can be done. It does require extensive work in terms of looking at existing service levels that are being provided by the municipality and comparing those levels of service to what would occur as a result of the development. That typically occurs during an annexation, though. It's not something that occurs during this process in terms of the land development review process. Municipalities often, when they consider annexations, they look at the fiscal impacts, the expenditures as well as the revenues.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson, I have a follow-up question.
Yes.
We are being asked to approve a preliminary plat for one lot for the entire area. How will that be apportioned for the housing element when it's only one lot and that's going to be under a non-profit organization, their ownership? How will the property tax be allocated for the housing aspect?
It's a very good question. It's our understanding the land still would be owned by the Bible College and would continue to be tax exempt. The improvements would be taxable and would be treated separately. And in all likelihood, there may be some kind of leasehold situation that the assessor would have to take into consideration in terms of doing that calculation.
And that's typically done by the assessor?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff or applicant? Okay. That said, we'll open up the public comment portion. I have a sign-up sheet here. We'll go through these first. When we'll call your name up here, if you can state your name and address. And we'd also like to try to keep these as close to 5 minutes as possible for individual comments. So number one on the list is Mr. Steve Roshek.
I'm Steve Roshek. I live at 45 Leisure Lane and own property 37 Leisure Lane that borders this property, as well as I have a rental property that's on Loafer Lane that also borders this property, which someone at this table has pretty good knowledge of. Kip. I have lots of questions, but before I give any questions, I just want to say I I'm a very, very firm believer in private property rights. If I didn't want this college here, I should have bought the property. Now, I couldn't afford it, but that's beyond the point. I think that they have done a wonderful job of working with the city, trying to come up with a plan and a process. I don't necessarily agree with all of it totally, but I think that they have done and gone above and beyond the call in most developments, and so I give them kudos for really trying to do a good job, and I appreciate it. I have a question for Sally or whoever on the staff. That portion of the road, of Trout Creek Road, will that become city instead of county road and maintained by the city?
Shall we get all the questions?
I can do that. Some of them are for you and some are for them and whoever else. I'll go through them however you want me to do that. The next question is, and a little bit of a concern, because from basically where the Ruth Lake is and Westwood Lakes down through all of this property, and I think it's called Jenkins, couldn't really read it on this one, is all wetlands, and it's a designated wetlands. Is the Corps of Engineers, you mentioned something about that, or is it EPA that actually is the governing position, and have those all been gone through, because they're going to be putting 2 roads across those, as well as digging up to put a water line, the loop, which I applaud that as well. I am also a little bit confused for the applicant's sake. The main structure that is going to have the 25-seat auditorium is also currently, or will be initially used as an admin building, and that's where the call center is. And when the other admin buildings built up on the south end of the property, will the call center move over there or not? Just out of curiosity, what happens, because it's a pretty good big area for an admin building that they would do that. And I've talked about this numerous times, and you made hint to it and quick to it as far as emergency access, but did the city not at some point have a requirement that there had to be 2 ingresses and egresses? Or is that only for emergencies, that you're going to have to have the second one? I'm glad you talked about the privatized part of the student. That was interesting. I'm going to make a statement, and it may be wrong, and if it is, I need somebody to correct me. The open space that you continually refer to in a PUD is open space for the applicant. It is not open space for all the people adjoining it and around it. I believe that is correct. So I don't want anybody to get excited about that. For those of us that live around it. The next area is, in the original plan, there was a campsite, and I don't see that. Is there a plan for a campsite of any sort? That's good. I'm confused about this detention pond. It looks like it's on a fairly high level. What's it going to detain water from? Especially since everything is flowing downhill from that. I don't know why there's a detention pond that high. I don't understand that, I guess, is what I'm saying. The last area that I have there's 2 things. When you look at the plan, it looks like a little roadway that runs from where the existing roadway comes in, flips off and goes to the existing lodge and then goes down. That is actually a water line easement, I believe, that runs all the way into Westwood Lakes, because the city owns 51% of Westwood Lakes water, or Westwood Lakes owns 49% of the city's water. I don't know what it is. But that goes all the way down to the wells. And if you look at that pretty carefully, when you come north of, I'm not even sure what the name of the road is right now. If you follow it up to where it intersects into Westwood Lakes, there's actually a road that goes down and you see the easement. Oh, it's Westwood Drive. is possibility there. I know at one point when they were putting in the sewer lines, they were using that access, because somewhere about there is where the hospital water line, sewer lines went across, maybe a little bit below that. But that just is an open area right now. It's clogged up with dirt and nobody can drive down there, which is fine, but that takes a skip loader about 3 minutes to rid of. The last area that I have a greater concern about is when you look at the structure and the stuff that is there, and I've mentioned this before, and whoever it was that mentioned the view towards Rampart, that was probably me, because that's my view, and thank you for remembering that. One of the things that's there, and I will be happy to talk with the applicant, is it is a huge aspen grove. And in the fall, that's my favorite thing, to sit on my patio and see the aspen change. That's going to disappear. And I understand, again, private property rights. They have the right to do that. I would ask, if when they're doing their construction, and I know that aspen is not easy to transplant, but if they were to move some of those to the westerly side, especially where they now have a maintenance barn that's 25 feet high, and I know they're going to make it look nice, I'm not afraid of that. It's no different than if somebody had bought that and put a house on there. I wouldn't have anything I can say about that. But just from the standpoint of they've got all of these potential trees that are there, if they somehow could conceivably move them, that would be very nice. Thank you.
Would you like to answer these questions?
Yeah, let's answer them as we go.
One question or one comment that I made, and I asked the applicant, was about Vista Lane, and I was told that that is not going to be a road, that they will access the maintenance barn from the parking lot.
We'll clarify that.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
Okay. I'll answer. Trout Creek Road will be the city's road, part of the city, so...
It is currently owned by the city. Trout Creek Road from 24 down to city limits, and will remain city owned. Yes, we do.
Yep. The wetlands, the designated wetlands, those are under the jurisdiction of the Army Corps of Engineers. There is a requirement that they receive a nationwide permit. They will not be disturbing more than an acre for those permits, so that's a fairly simple process in order to make those crossings in the wetlands. The use of the main building, I'll let Brett speak to. The question about 2 ingresses, they're not required. One main ingress plus the emergency egress from Vista Lane. The open space is private open space, so it is for the benefit of the applicant, and that's perfectly acceptable within the PUD zone, is to designate that as for private use. The campsite is not in this plan, so that is not part of this approval or review at this time. The detention pond, I'll let Bill speak to.
And I'll let Mr. Campbell add my comments as needed, but the detention pond is currently located in a spot where all of the stormwater from the impervious areas, the roofs, the roadway sidewalks flows to this detention pond, where the water is collected there, is given a chance to infiltrate, and then it's released in a controlled and measured method back into the drainage channel and then flows down to Dickens Creek from there. So it's located high on the site, but it is downhill from all of the impervious areas necessary to collect the water, contain it, hold it, and release it in a measured manner.
Including the main building?
Correct.
How does it get from there downhill and down?
It's through a system of stormwater pipes. No, it flows by gravity.
Really?
The greatest concern about the view of Rampart, just recently being out there, the main view to the west is of Gold Hill, which all the towers and antennas are on. And so I guess Mr. Roshek must live far enough back that he also has the view of the rampart as well. We'll take that into consideration. But the way the main building is sited and depressed into the hill, I think the homes are far enough back that they see over that, and that because the perspective of the rampart is so far away, that it still preserves at least the tops of those ridge lines from Westwood Lakes. We could verify that out in the field. Yeah, and then as far as the Aspen Grove, I know a good portion of that Aspen Grove is still on the Forest Service property, so a significant amount will still be preserved with the forest. We could put the aerial up and see that. Monday afternoon when we were out, we also noticed that the maintenance barn has a very nice group of trees that will be just to the west of it that will be preserved, so that will give it some buffer as well. Vista Lane is not going to have any public access. It is only for emergency only.
Will it be developed as a roadway, a pavement, or some sort of dirt road?
It's just a dirt road. It's a 20-foot wide dirt road for fire trucks, emergency access. It will have a Knox box on it. That's a locked key so that they can get in. Okay?
So I have a question with you regarding your answer about protecting the view of Rampart Range or anywhere else. Do we actually have city standards and criteria on view protection?
What it says in our design standards for the massing of building is when reasonably possible, you try to protect the views, but we do not have a prohibition that you cannot.
Thank you.
The question I could not answer dealt with the use of the building. Larry?
In your question, Mr. Roshek, about the administration offices that I think that Brett Prather had referred to, those offices are for the college administration staff only. The administration building that is on the plan as a future development is for the Andrew Wommack Ministries administrative staff. That's a different staff entirely. No, sir.
Okay, next on the list is Mr. Bob Edmonston. And sir, if you state your name and address.
My name is Bob Edmonston. I live at 42 Still Forest Lane. I've got 5 issues. Can you all put this back up here on the screen, or you can't? Can you? Okay, the first question has to do with the student housing. Up under site information, it says student housing 96,000 square feet. Down under at bottom under phase 1 construction, item number 2, student housing, there'll be 12 units. 12 units divided into 96,000 is about 8,000 square feet per unit. Under their system here, they're calling for 3 stories, which would be about 2,600 square feet per slab, per story. They're calling anywhere between 5,000 and 8,000 square feet per story. The math, as far as I'm concerned, if you do 5,000 feet times 12 units, you come up with 180,000 square feet, not 92. If you do about 8,000 square feet, which makes these student housings really big, you come up with 288,000 square feet total. something's wrong on the site plan. I wish they would keep it as small as possible for these housing units. Item number 2 is this road that they added in here. I don't know that this is between property owners and that roof right there, but I wish it was greater than 100 feet. It looks like to me like they're getting pretty close to lots number 11, 12, and 13. So I'd like to know the distance between that road, because there's going to be a lot of traffic there, and we kind of want to watch it. Item number 4 has to do with the privatization of the housing units. Ms. Riley, when she gave her presentation, which was excellent, she said there is a proposal to make the student housing private, therefore taxable. The gentleman here from the company said it was the intent of the applicant to make these private. I think it ought to be made private, and I think it ought to be written in there that these are private. Otherwise, if you come down the road and you start building student housing, and they keep it in the ministry, there's no tax. There's no tax revenue. None off the whole property. So I'm suggesting that we make the requirement that these will be privatized and taxable on the student housing. Item number, probably 5. The concern would be the amount of events that the applicant has on the property. I'm anticipating maybe 2,000, 2,500, 3,000 people at maybe 4 or 5 events. But in the prospectus here, it mentions an annual conference, and I'd like to know if that's going to be in excess of 5,000 or 6,000 people on the property at one time, and how long those annual conferences would last. I think that's an enormous amount of people, if I'm correct, to use those roads in around that neighborhood. The last item I have is in the, it refers to the water development fee. It does say it's $2,000 an acre for the commercial development. I want to confirm that according on the first page, that the commercial development on this property is 147 acres, which is what is on the first page of this. Page number 1, 147 acres at $2,000 comes up to me to be $294,000 for the water development fee. And I would just like that confirmed and see if that's correct. Thank you much.
Shall we take these questions?
Sure.
I'm sorry, Mr. Edmondson, I didn't follow the housing calculations, but maybe the applicant did.
Well, it says 96,000 feet for the house. Then it has 12 units down below. 96,000 divided by 12, 8,000 per housing unit. Then they say that they're going to have anywhere between 5,000 and 8,000 square foot per floor. So that doesn't jive. You know what?
The student housing allocation for density is 12 units, 35 feet tall, first three floors. It has a square footage per floor of either 5,000 to 8,000 square feet.
But saying we have 5,000 times 12 is, see, 5,000 times 3 is 15,000. 15,000 times 12 is 180,000 feet.
Right.
Not 96,000.
That's right. And
So something's wrong.
And where does it say 96,000?
Up at the top.
Up at the top.
That's the building footprint square footage, not the overall, so that's only for the main level.
No, what they're covering is building coverage. A building coverage is the footprint of the building, not the total square footage of the
So
house.
you end up with close to 300,000 square feet of student housing.
That's correct. That's what's being proposed. Okay, thanks for that clarification.
I can answer the second question, and that was regarding the access road proximity to the property to the south. Where the edge of the roadway is approximately 230 feet away from that property line, and just within that area from that northerly rear lot line of those lots, there's 30 feet of vertical fall down to the proposed roadway. So 230 feet horizontally and then 30 feet additional vertically from those existing residential lots.
And in addition, there's a very thick section of forest in there, spruce trees that provide a very nice buffer. As far as the question about the privatization of the housing, we'd like the applicant to answer that question. It's a proposal or an intent. Mr. Edmondson is concerned that it ought to be private. We could have the applicant address that.
It's my understanding there's no requirement for the privatization of the housing. We offered that as a concession in order to generate property tax to alleviate some of the questions and issues that were raised in that regard. So it's my understanding there's not a requirement. We did offer that as a concession, and that's what we've been working towards and continue to work towards.
And your plan is?
Our plan is to complete that with a private company. We've got two companies that we've got bids from, and we're working through the details currently.
Mr. Bozeman, would you be opposed to a condition of approval that would provide for that?
I'm not sure if there's a legal precedent for that I'm not opposed to that. Like I said, we offered it as a concession and intend to continue down that road to provide that concession.
Thank you.
Mr. Bozeman, if you could answer the question about the amount of events in the annual conference.
There will be five. We currently have 5 local events. Our largest event is the Summer Family Bible Conference, and our largest attendance at that conference has been between 1,100 and 1,200 people, and that was in the July of 2011. And so we're anticipating that we'll be able to accommodate up to 2,500 people in that auditorium over the future years as we anticipate and hope that the event grows.
And then the last question dealt with the water development fee. It is not on the total 147 acres. It is for the area that is developed, commercially developed, so that would be for the sanctuary area and its accessory uses. Building coverage is about 10% of the acres, so about 14 acres.
Nothing for the admin building and the housing?
That includes the admin building. That was all the questions.
Okay. Next person signed up is Ed Catmull.
My apologies, going to take off the list.
Okay. We have Lynn Harrison.
I just said who it was on this side, so I decided.
Sam? Okay. So Lynn doesn't want to speak?
No.
Sam Marsh, 105 Still Forest Lane in Westwood Lakes. Clarification, I've just got a couple of questions, clarification on the educational thing that Tom Rollinger brought up. You mentioned whether it was accredited or not. You never asked the question, so I'd like to have, my understanding is it is not an accredited college from what we've read, but I'd like to have that verified or not. The other thing that came up when we were talking was that
after the 2 years, people are licensed, so they're not ordained, is my understanding. That Womack is self-ordained, so he is not ordained by an accredited university. And my understanding is that the students will not be ordained ministers. They'll be licensed, so I just want that clarified.
And I believe we can have applicant come back up and answer those two. Those are directed at you, I believe.
Okay. The students that graduate from the 2-year program are licensed by the state of Colorado to administer sacerdotal duties of marriage and burial. They are not all the students ordained. Some of the students are ordained, but not all students are ordained. And that's a selective process. I'm not really clear on the criteria, but there is a criteria for ordination, and not all students are ordained. I'd say a minimal number of students are actually ordained.
And the accreditation?
Accreditation.
The college is not accredited, and that's intentional. We're not interested in being accredited, and it is not an accredited college.
Okay, thank you. Next on the list, we have Linda Pierce.
Hello. I'm Linda Pierce. I live at 227 Lina Drive in Westwood Lakes subdivision. And I just have a few concerns. And listening to the questions come from all of you, it seems that I'll just ask the questions. Kyle mentioned the future Big Bubble plan, and I'm just wondering if the Big Bubble plan shouldn't be in place before approval and construction. There are a lot of questions that should be answered, it seems, and I'm just wondering if they shouldn't be answered before okaying the plans. And that's including all traffic control plans, including the future. It just seems that those should be in place before approval. So I'm asking, will those be in place before approval? Regarding CDOT, I wondered, Scott, I think you said you work with CDOT. I'm not looking for him, but I'm sorry. I just wonder if these were all open meetings, if they can be open meetings to the public. Could it have been, should it be? I also we're not 500,000 size Colorado Springs up here. There are 2 large religious organizations in the Springs. They have much larger space, and they can work with traffic regarding special events in tremendously better ways, I think, than we can up here. I'm going to ask, is that something important to realistically reconsider? And it really does seem that the student health care issue should be addressed prior to the approval. I just ask, does it not? So those are, I just really, for a town of some 7,000, the influx of 3,000 people is tremendous, and I just think that's really, really something to consider. I think there are a lot of people in this town who might not even know about this, and if they do, they don't know where to even, I said, I don't know what's going on there as far as why people aren't more involved in this process. That's just a personal, so I wanted to know. And, those are my main questions. Thanks.
Billy, you want to start and answer the CDOT?
Sure. Let me start with we'll take a stab at the traffic control plans. Much like all the special events that we have in town, 5th of July, we have the Pro Cycling Challenge coming this year. Each one of them is unique, and each one has to be looked at individually as to how big it is, what time of day it is, what the demands are, and so those traffic control plans are unique to each special event. And as needed, we'll have to work with the applicant to develop those, much like we do all the other special events in town. With regards to CDOT, there were no formal meetings with CDOT. CDOT did their review, we did our review, we had our engineering consultant do a review of LSC's work. And then there's correspondence, which are public records, that have gone back and forth as far as the approval. And the next step is the access permit, which is typical. So, Chris, you want to add to that?
Yes, I would like to add that. It's Chris McGranahan again with LSC. I'd like to talk about the comment about the Colorado Springs has the big religious institutions. Woodland Park has a series of traffic signals, as you all know. The ones that are in the core of the community don't have the big, huge developments, so to speak. But the signals that are on the edges of town, if you know what the land uses are, there's a couple with big grocery stores, there's one with a big box. This, you saw earlier, maybe not everyone noticed it, but this site was considered for mixed use, which could have been lots of commercial, lots of residential, lots of office. So when we were going through this process with our client, we just did some kind of back of the napkin comparisons to what this site generates compared to what a 147-acre mixed-use site would generate. And yes, there's some special events this site's going to have a few times a year that would be equal to or maybe exceed that. But on a day-to-day basis, this will generate less traffic than a 147-acre mixed-use site. Not only that, this site with the 500, it's actually up to 300 units of residential on site, but it's for up to 500 persons. So normally when you add houses, you add traffic, but in this case, the housing is targeted towards students. So the students that are leaving their unit in the morning, if they were going to drive to the campus, they're not going to show up outside of the site. And if they have a job off of campus, they're going to be leaving the campus when the other students are coming on, so it's kind of a reverse pattern. So the housing on site actually helps reduce the impact of the adjacent road. So that's similar to most mixed-use developments. When you have a lot of housing clustered with commercial, the idea is that you can walk to get Staples, you can walk to stores, you can walk to your job potentially. So while this site does generate a lot of traffic, it was right for any number of commercial office type mixed-use projects at some point. I think this project came along right about the time when there wasn't much of a market in the economy for that type of a use, but I think in the coming years there would have been a market for a fairly large development here of some sort. So I think, and it's at a traffic signal that exists. So there wasn't, one of the biggest issues with CDOT is if you try to put a new traffic signal on a state highway, let alone a U.S. highway, CDOT's general, their first priority is to move through traffic along the highway, access is secondary. So they're really, they have a specific department within CDOT that looks at access. And they've had an access code that they have to follow. And so we had to go through all that process. So it is a fairly detailed process. There's lots of legal requirements. The access code is considered a legal document by the state. And so when it's violated, the state attorney general's office does get involved. So they take it very seriously. So the fact that we've got an offer from CDOT should give people a good feeling that the state thinks that this is doable, it's a plan that will work, and it doesn't add any more access to the highway. There was a comment earlier about does the city require 2 access points. In my opinion, if they did require 2 access points, it would not have been a second access point to the highway. It would have been through the neighborhood, which I don't think I wouldn't have liked that. No one would have liked that. So the fact that the city just requires the primary ingress, egress, and the emergency access worked well with what CDOT requires. They don't like having lots of access points on their highway. So it worked well for this project that they had an existing traffic signal that we can improve, and we're planning to do that. So that's it.
Thank you, Chris. With respect to the bubble plan for the student housing, the parameters are well defined. Number of units, number of buildings, square footage, heights, as well as the character of the design, which needs to be compatible with what has already been established and you've seen with the main building. So having administrative review of the student housing piece seemed appropriate and adequate at this time. It was not something that the applicant was ready to invest in a lot of design right up front, especially since they were planning on privatizing this. We have very good standards in our design review for landscaping and others, lighting, so forth. So we felt it was reasonable to have the administrative review and show the bubble areas. If they go outside those areas or plan to ask to go outside those areas or change the number of buildings or the size of the buildings, then that would be an amendment to the PUD. They would be back before you requesting your consideration to review that amendment to the PUD. So that's how we felt comfortable with the bubble plan approach.
Next on the list is Norm Steen.
Good evening, my name is Norm Steen. I reside at 140 Blue Sky, Woodland Park. That is, if you check the map, that is not in city property, but it's in county, one of those enclaves. I'd just rise to make a comment, and that is to speak in favor of the plan and urge your adoption of both motions tonight. I view Karis Bible College as a good neighbor. Obviously, a very well considered, well-developed plan, and very positive impact in many ways to the county, as well as the city of Woodland Park. I'm sure that many questions are going to come up, but I think that through the processes that we set up, there's plenty of room to answer these questions as they come up. But so I'll just rise to urge your support of the plan.
And last on the list here is Mr. Bill Page.
Good evening. I've been a resident in this area for 52 years. I've owned commercial property in Woodland Park for 47 years. I've been a licensed architect in the state for 48 years. I want to compliment the architectural team, all their design and building envelopes that they've developed and their master planning here. And I've been a student of studying growth on the Highway 24 corridor up here for 45 years. Traffic counts, number of businesses, and so on. And I did that in research of developing commercial property in Woodland Park, starting back in the 60s and 70s and so on. And so that's my background. I'd like to talk about the economic sense of the Charis Bible College, and I see a lot of benefits to the citizens and taxpayers of Woodland Park. And I just want to go through these, like I got 7 comments I want to make. One is, the first one, I'm a taxpayer. I pay taxes to Teller County, and that's prorated out to school districts in the city and into the county and other districts. I pay taxes to the state of Colorado, and been doing that for 37 years up here. And then and when I stop and think about that, a portion of my Colorado tax, income tax that I pay, goes to help support state colleges and campuses. And I just want to make that point. And the next point, third point, Charis Bible College is privately funded. You know, I don't see any of my tax dollars going to the state of Colorado or going into the building of this campus. I haven't seen it, and haven't seen all the documents. I don't know what's been submitted to any. But I don't believe that they're asking for sales tax dollars or property tax dollars to go to the funding of this project. And the other thing, fourth item I want to mention, in my 40-some years of business ventures in Woodland Park,
I've seen 5 economic boom-bust cycles. And it's tied to growth and construction, and then it's overbuilt or the economy takes a nosedive. And in the last 10 years, we've had flat growth in Woodland Park in the worst economic downturn that I've ever seen. And so, 6th point I want to make is I'm familiar with a lot of college towns in the Midwest, have relatives that live there, have taught there and stuff like that. And they have housing cycles, but they don't go boom, bust, boom, bust, boom, bust all the time. They have a more stable economy. And I think to have a college town that has students come here, it's been said that they have other jobs and so on, and they're going to put some stability in our economy, that instead of an economy that goes like this all the time, if we got all these cycles, I think you'll have an economy that'll flow more evenly. And the last point I want to make is I very much support this plan, and I would urge your approval of it. It's a very good architectural concept and master plan, and I think it'll set a higher image for the whole community in Woodland Park, all the residents and the businesses. You give it 10 years, it's not an industry, it's a campus, but and I want to talk about the character of the people. I have leased to students that have went to Charis Bible College. First one I leased to was about 5-6 years ago. He moved here from Arizona, and he was going to college there. He signed a 3-year lease. He got through with his college, and he and his wife decided to move, and he still owed money on his lease. Paid his rent on time every month, and he even paid his rent after he closed his store. But he had a high moral ethic character, and I leased to another Bible student that's went to Charis College, and they pay their rent on time. They're very honorable people. They're middle-aged, these people I've leased to, and I've had experiences dealing with Charis Bible College with students that have moved to a community we're involved with in Divide and Meadowpark communities, and they're all, my experiences, they're all highly honorable, reputable people, and I think that that is a plus gold star for the type of students that I don't think the police department will be getting calls about rowdy college parties, and so I think it's an excellent benefit, and I'd really want to welcome the Charis Bible Group here, and that's all I got to say. Recommend you approve it.
Thank you, Bill. We didn't have anybody else on the list here, but I would like to give anybody else that wants to come up and make a comment. Sir?
I'm a latecomer.
Kerry Alstrom, reside at 162 Rolling Park Drive, and I'd like to speak in favor of this program. I've been in other communities that have had similar discussions about growth and not growth, and there's only really 2 reasons for a community. One is for commerce, and the other is for protection. A community that isn't growing is going to be dying, and I've seen this in other locations. I've lived in college towns in the Midwest, like Bill mentioned. College towns bring an energy and a dynamic to the community that no other entity can offer. Bringing additional housing to the area and stability, that's all true.
Norman, Oklahoma, the property values stay high all the time because students are coming in and out. It's well thought out, but the bottom line is there will be growth in Woodland Park. It can be planned, and Woodland Park does a good job of that, but if it doesn't grow now, it'll grow sometime in the future. There are those people that want to have a thumb on, we want to keep it just like we got it right now. That can't happen. It either goes forward or it goes backwards. But a college that is a Bible college is going to have high-quality people. They're going to have their hearts in the right place. It'll be good for the community. So I vote in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else?
Yes, hello, I'm Mark Rabel. I live at 723 U.S. Highway 24, which happens to be the Woodland Country Lodge. I'm in the community. I moved here in November, and I am the owner of the Woodland Country Lodge. When I was doing my due diligence and looking into Woodland Park, I ran across Womack Ministry with great interest, and I looked at it very closely. You know, there's an old saying, when you're green, you grow, and when you're ripe, you rot. And what interested me is this community looked like it was growing, and I came from Metro Detroit, which was struggling, to put it least. I'm very much in favor of this, and when I looked into Womack Ministry, and I served on a couple of foundation boards, and I went to Charity Navigator and looked into Womack Ministry quite thoroughly, and I was very impressed with how solid they are. It's a good organization, and I'm in full support. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Okay, at this point, we'll close the public comments portion. We're going to take about a 10-minute break here, so if we could get back by about 5 till 9, that'd be great. Thank you. You guys going to just keep going? I know, our picture's empty, so well, that's, yeah, I'm careful because otherwise that's a good thing.
I always they're really not. You're welcome. Do you want a napkin?
on a diet.
This is my therapy, is to...
I know that.
Me too.
Well, that's true, when you get here for 6 o'clock, that is...
You want to?
I want cake too, yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, you get me.
I think I'm drinking all our water. There's a little bit left.
You only left one?
Still from you.
How'd you get from
What's in our trailer, just a snack.
Not so, I can,
More water?
Gotta get up here.
Should have milk to Dunkin'.
That would be perfect.
There's nobody throwing stuff at us. Although I did envision this to turn into another Walmart. What's that? Right,
I had to get up at 4 o'clock.
traffic trips.
When you said it, that wouldn't be just a normal, Tuesday to residential, condo complex, all of that stuff. But you want to go where the DEA, that's
You answered that very well. I was impressed.
How are things going? I've been down there since we
Commercial start coming again, hopefully food will be here.
I wondered about that.
Who's counting the days?
Gordon here, there's nothing.
We're doing keep sharp.
I'm gonna start carrying my thing. If I gotta hold this position, I might need
Plenty of room to duck underneath.
Oh, it is. I'm trying to hold for that Kuiper.
Statement of start discussing.
Homes divide.
You want to nip in the discussion?
Seriously, 28,000 acres of it.
So I just want to pass it through.
You take his pictures while we're chewing cookies.
Oh, of the new.
Okay. You already got my ugly mug?
I believe I do, but I can't even. No, actually, I'm not sure.
17 miles.
call your water.
Stay for stay.
No, I have a little bit left.
Only had it.
That's all I'm saying.
No close.
Have another or something, don't.
I'm gonna go to higher than that.
There's a leftover piece of pizza before I came out.
Tomato toast. I'm serious food aversions these days, so. Limited things look okay. Yes.
What you got?
I don't remember if I got it in there or not.
It's on the paper.
Well, yeah, but I don't know.
Thank you.
Okay, you don't really want this. Stop here.
Way to move. Good?
I make everything but
Oh my goodness.
No, I'd like to stay.
And that for
On the level,
Mine's an 80.
Where you think it was divided up?
More
land, more area?
I need 50 acres.
Half the price, so we can bring all the tours that show on the town center. From behind, going, who's that?
That's, I did that because...
Are they gonna take my little, tell me some land or something? That ain't been 50 years. The works fires have been very busy, my books are big already. And that's before I get back.
This car came up for sale, and it was...
I'm getting my non-profit, there's anything. Change your mind. My husband and I would be like, that is, there's no point in having, I'm sorry, yeah, I'm very excited. I'm excited, I know it's been going. We thought you ready to hear.
Not that I haven't deserved something.
It's our Monterey. And it was about 3 months after we got but you know, it's hard. But you feel like we're doing fast, even when we're not.
It's ready.
It's easier to do. There you go.
Kind of stuck in the middle, so...
Okay, if we could maybe get started again here and get back on track.
Play call. He's a nice guy. We got 3? That's good. Well, give it to us.
I need to wait for Larry.
Oh, there he is. There he is. So we got time.
Wait a minute.
I do.
There he is.
Note the reconvene time here at 8:56. We'll get back started, and we'll start off, we'll let Aaron Smith make a comment here, City Attorney.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to remind the Commission that although tonight we've heard a lot of comments that tend toward the character of the constituency that the Bible College would bring to the Woodland Park area, those really are not appropriate to a land use discussion. So I would just, caution the Commission that as you run into your deliberations, you may not play those parts of the testimony.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. At this time, we'd like to give the applicant an opportunity to follow up with any comments to questions that were raised or comments that were made, if they have any. Okay. And at this point, it's our chance to ask final questions of the applicant and staff, if anybody has any. We'll start with Charles. No, sir. Tom?
I think I've exhausted my supplier questions, which were very numerous.
Okay,
Thank you.
No, I'm all set, thank you.
you?
No, I'm good.
Larry?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm just going to start rattling off some questions, and then the appropriate staff or applicant can speak to that at the appropriate time. Looking at the site plan, I have noticed that in the very southeast corner of the site plan, adjacent to Highway 24, a 100-foot buffer seems to decrease in size 100 feet down to maybe 25 feet, and it appears to be adjacent to other private property to the south. Why did we lose the 100-foot buffer? Sure.
I'll just walk over to the site plan so we can location. this is where the 100-foot buffer ends, which is adjacent to the Westwood Lakes subdivision. It goes down to a 25-foot buffer here. And these two properties are owned by WOMAC, but they are still outside the city limits and not part of this CUD.
Okay. Do we have any idea what that potential land use for that property maybe?
It's outside the city limits. It's zoned commercial in Teller County. So should the owners decide to do something with that property, they would go through Teller County's land use and planning.
And so right now where we have the 100-foot buffer right adjacent to this area, next to those lots, that's within the county as well, right? Zone residential?
It is, yes.
Okay. Well, that's a concern that we're not extending that 100-foot buffer without knowing what that use could be along that stretch.
It's commercially zoned,
Okay.
so it wouldn't be residential. There, there would not be residents living on that site unless they went through a rezoning.
Okay, it's zone commercial in the county?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Question number 2, a question for Kip. Would you explain to us, this is certainly going to be tied into the city water supply and source. So the water that comes to this particular site, is this treated at our treatment plant and then piped all the way through here, or is it collected at the Gold Hill or left-hand side, have some treatment and then...
It's collected from multiple sources, our North Wellfield, Boy Gulch, and probably some of the Homestake pipeline.
Okay.
And it's treated and distributed to the Gold Hill zone. From there, the Womack property will be all on the Gold Hill zone.
Okay.
So it'll come from two directions, both the Stearns and I guess you call it the east side.
So there's no raw water being collected within this facility that is then goes into our system?
No.
Okay. Okay. Next question is, I don't know if it's the traffic engineer or the engineer for the project or staff. Could you explain to me exactly the improvements that are going to occur on Trout Creek and Highway 24?
Wish it was a little bit larger, but shows the improvements from Highway 24 to the main entrance to the property.
And Mr. Campbell, what's that distance?
Oh, really, my scale.
Oh, just estimate.
Based upon this distance from there to there, that's 4 miles.
Okay. And what's going to happen?
There's going to be widening improvements at the intersection itself in order to add the additional turn lanes that Chris had mentioned. And so there will be a left turn lane heading onto Highway 24, and then a through right striped out that can be used as a dual left turn lane during those larger events that take place. And so what is taking place is the widening is going to take place predominantly on the south portion of the roadway to extend a dedicated left turn lane all the way back, and then a transition back until we get to a normal sort of 2-lane section in this location here. And then as you continue in this direction, there will also be a left turn widening improvement done for the entrance onto the Womack property itself. And so all the dimensions are per LSC's analysis as far as the stacking dimensions and as far as the tapers and transitions for those turn improvements.
And this street will be built to full city standards, and at this time, will that be curb and gutter? No? Okay. Sidewalk?
Trail.
Trail?
The trail is being proposed to start at the intersection and work its way all the way to the entrance, the 8-foot gravel trail.
And do I understand that the trail will be extended further south from this point as well?
We're showing a slight extension continuing on in that direction.
Okay.
Our plans here reflected pushing past the entrance.
Okay.
I would like to add to Mr. Campbell's comments also, there are some signal modifications at 24, addition of a signal head, and there's probably likely some other changes to the mast arms and things like that.
Okay.
That will be worked out in final details.
Okay, thank you. The existing lodge that's on the site is being moved and now being converted into a maintenance building that would be located on the western portion of this property or the villa area. Was there any consideration of moving that building away from the existing Westwood Lake neighborhood and maybe moving it to the north of the sanctuary? Was that location ever considered? Just like...
Referencing the barn, the maintenance barn.
Yes, the barn, yeah. No, this is always seems to be the logical location?
Yes.
Okay.
If this is the location, because of proximity to the west, to the facility itself.
Okay. Not as a requirement, or I would just strongly consider that site north of the sanctuary building and the parking lots perhaps to be considered, it may be a less of an impact to the existing neighborhood.
Can you come up to the podium and make your comments, because otherwise it won't be on record?
Sorry. Yes, once again, Brett Praker, Architectural Innovations. We can't look at that site, but we did look at this site for its proximity to the west side access and also to the facilities itself as far as the locations is our reason for that. I guess to address that, I don't know how to address it. Look at the other option at the site. That is something that, yes, that can be open and then we can look at.
That's all I'm asking you to do is look at that. Let's look at the grading plan a minute. Pull that up.
When you look at the grading for the parking lot north of the sanctuary and all, it starts to be pretty close to their property line. Forest Service there.
Okay. Mr. Campbell, again, could you show us where the berm will be graded on the grading plan for the protection to the properties to the west?
Yeah. Actually, how the grading is working with this area, it's not so much the berm, but the parking lot is depressed. So the parking lot is sitting lower. And so this is a cut slope along this area here that depresses the parking lot down.
Okay. And did staff kind of realize that was going to be the bermed area that we've been talking about? Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to just make a general statement, then I'll make a request for two modifications of the conditions. One is that this particular project will have a major impact to the city of Woodland Park. There's no doubt about it. When we look at an addition of perhaps 3,000 students coming and serving on participating on this campus, that is significant. That will have a change in our character of our community. Number two, as far as water supply and whatnot, there are subjects dealing with water and land use. This particular project, as we were told before in October, will consume 2.3% of the total water supply for the city of Woodland Park. And that's everything that we don't use. We only use about 54% now. So we still have another 46% buffer, and another 2.3 is significant. I mean, it sounds like a small percentage, but for one project, that's a large number. So that has a major impact. We're creating a project in the development that will have at build-out 5,000 vehicle trips per day coming and going throughout a 24-hour period. And again, that's quite a bit of traffic we've been generated by a single project in the city of Woodland Park. It will have significant positive economic impact on our community on all aspects, and that was outlined in the information that we received from Mr. Anderson, and the indirect and direct ramifications of the site and the economic benefits to the city. It can't be understated that will have a positive impact. My request is that as a concession, we've been talking about the privatization of the housing. I'd like the applicant to strongly consider the actual taking the next step and taking that condition or that comment and then stating to the planning commission and as well as city council that will be something that will happen and not be something that will be considered to be happen, because I think that's a very important part of the equation. Right now I don't see any confirmation that it will happen, but I'd like to ask the applicant, and I repeat, I will ask and I won't require, or we should require that happen, but we should at least have that be considered. And I'd like, if it doesn't happen here tonight, but it should happen before the city council. And the last time I have is the conditions of the recommendation conditions. And I draw everybody's attention to condition number 13, which is the condition asked for by the city of Carroll County in the letter dated March 20th. The annexation has been completed, the annexation plot has been recorded, the annexation agreement has agreed to. It's too late to ask for specific amendments to the agreement?
No, the annexation agreement can be amended.
Okay, and what's the process for that?
It's city council approval.
Okay. I'm thinking that at this time, because it's part of the plan for the things that are happening for those amendments, that possibly is not necessary to amend the agreement. Those provisions are taken care of adequately in the other portions of the plan. So that request by the county, again, I don't think needs to happen in the annexation agreement. I lost my notes. That's all. I'm sorry, I can find my notes.
She did
Okay. Kathy?
Okay, thank you.
I'm good, and I have no further questions or comments, so I guess at this time, we would open it up for a motion.
Can I do...
Go ahead, no question. Go ahead.
I would like to support Larry, but take it to the next step and make it a requirement that the applicant privatizes the housing. I think that's a big plus for the whole project. I'd like to put that on the table.
I'm sorry.
And the record reflects tonight that the applicant did concur with that. I thought that the record reflected when Commissioner Arden asked the applicant if he would consent to that he said that he would.
My response was that if it's a legal requirement, then that's fine. We'll agree with that. As far as making it a requirement or a condition, if that shows prerogative and that shows then it is a prerogative. We have moved forward with that. It's a commitment of ours. It's a personal commitment, and if y'all instruct us that we will have to make that a condition, then we will certainly agree to that. But I'm just not aware of that was a legal requirement for us to be required to make that commitment a condition.
the fact that you would voluntarily agree to it is what answers the issue. If the commission requested and you would voluntarily agree to it, then it's a done matter, and it moves forward to the council with planning commission's recommendation with that additional condition.
Okay, well, that's fine. I think what Paula was saying, or maybe I shouldn't be talking for her, is I think she'd like to have that as number 14.
Yes. Correct.
That being the privatization, so the numbers work out a little bit better.
Yes, that's what I understood the commissioner to say, and that's why I had to follow up with the applicant. So my understanding is that the applicant is agreeable to that being added as condition number 14.
Any other comments?
Well, I did have a couple of comments. I don't think there's any question that what this project is a net economic benefit to the city of Woodland Park. However, I would caution that probably don't want to overplay the card of this is going to become a college town. You know, it's small. It's very small now. Of course, I mean, it'll grow. But certainly, it's no Boulder or Stanford or Greeley or Fort Collins. So I would just, in my opinion, I would caution against overplaying that particular card. But on the other hand, we are a small town, and it will have a positive impact. I still, and I think you can tell from my line of questioning, I'm still concerned about whether the additional property tax and sales tax revenue will offset the additional cost that the city and the various taxing districts will be faced with. Now, I know RE2 said, oh great, bring in the kids, but remember RE2 wanted a no increase. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Do we have a motion to...
Could I ask one more question?
Yes.
Sally, if we approve motions 1 and 2, assuming that there are any significant changes in the development, will we ever see this again?
You will see it as a final plat. Will be the next time you see it, as well as you will see just the narrowly focused flood hazard development permit. After that, unless there is an amendment to this PUD,
So this will go to council.
It will go to council,
Right.
and they will have a zoning ordinance, so it will be a first reading of the ordinance and then the public hearing and final plan.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Stackhouse.
Yes.
I think so that we're perfectly clear with what the motion includes, and I need to offer some language for condition number 14, and so I would like to do that. And I believe that condition is very simply put, very straightforwardly put, but I think it should be that the housing on the development will be student housing. That's what we're talking about, is student housing. It's not going to be permanent housing of any sort. It's student housing. And the student housing component will be privatized along the lines that were discussed from the podium, either through some sort of lease arrangement or an arrangement by which the assessor can separately tax the student housing portion. Is that a condition that the commissioners feel comfortable with, as stated?
Yes.
And then again, Mr. Bozeman, is that condition is stated, something that are consenting to?
It's not going to change what we're doing on anyway, so
Okay.
that's fine.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
Good. That said, all right, move forward.
I will move that the planning commission approve the proposed project as it qualifies for a PUD district, and approves the rezoning of the property to PUD, and approves the PBD final development plan, subject to the conditions found in the staff reports 1 through 13, and in addition to the addition number 14, as suggested by the city attorney. All this being based on the findings that the project does conform with the city review criteria for each of the applications. And that's my motion.
Good. And Sally, just for clarification, that's just on the first one, we need to do the second one after. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
So, Scott, call for a vote.
Watson.
Agree?
Schrader. Yes. Rollinger.
No.
Mattingly.
Yes.
Sorry, Diane,
Yes.
Larson.
Yes.
Everett.
Yes.
Stackhouse.
Yes.
Motion carried. 7-1.
And on the second item of discussion, do we have a motion?
I move that the planning commission approve the preliminary plat for the sanctuary, subject to no conditions and finding that all review criteria have been met.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Stackhouse.
Yes.
Everett.
Yes.
Larson.
Yes.
Majou.
Marjorie, yes.
Mattingly.
Yes.
Rollinger.
No.
Schrader.
Yes.
Watson.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-1.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was looking for my sheet here, Sally, I lost the agenda again.
Planning Commissioners report.
Reports.
Do you have any reports?
I do not have anything to report.
Staff, our only report is that we do have a case for April 26th, so we'll have a meeting, we'll get the packet out, and then I'll distribute the monthly report after adjournment.
Will that be a 7 o'clock start?
It will,
Thank you.
yes.
Any discussions or comment from anybody?
Do you want our plans and notebooks?
I would love all your plans and notebooks back.
Okay, quite welcome to. All right, with that said, it is now 9:25. We will close the April 12th, 2012 planning meeting.
This is... What you like?